The Ferguson Township Board of Supervisors meeting for Tuesday, May 6th to order. Please rise as you're able and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. You may be seated. And at this time, I'll recognize the Assistant Township Manager to give the meeting procedures and to call the roll.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you to the members of the board, staff, and public for joining us this evening for the May 6th regular meeting of the Board of Supervisors. This meeting has been properly advertised in accordance with Pennsylvania Sunshine Act as a hybrid meeting with the option to attend virtually and in person here in the main meeting room. If you are in attendance virtually using the WebEx platform and wish to speak on behalf of an agenda item, please say your name, municipality of residence, and the topic you wish to speak on when the chair calls on you. If you are attending in person with us in the main meeting room and wish to speak on behalf of an agenda item, please address the board at the podium and state your name, municipality of residence, and the topic you wish to speak on. Prior to commencing the meeting, I have a few short procedural items to cover. First, members of the public attending using the WebEx platform are asked to remain muted during the meeting to prevent any ambient noise from disrupting the meeting. If a member of the public is acknowledged by the chair, they may unmute their microphone for their question or comment. Secondly, board members are asked to indicate their name when motioning or seconding a motion so that the minutes may accurately reflect the action taken. Finally, a roll call of the Board of Supervisors will now be taken to ensure that all members can hear and interact using the WebEx meeting platform. Please indicate that you are here when your name is called. Ms. Strickland.
Here.
Ms. Stevens.
Here.
Mr. Thompson.
Here.
Mr. Patterson.
Here.
Mr. Heller.
Here.
Chair, you have a quorum.
All right, thank you. The Board of Supervisors did meet on Thursday, May 2nd for an executive session regarding matters of personnel and litigation. While the board was there, we also did receive an informational-only briefing regarding the storms from last Tuesday and the recovery efforts that were underway in the township. I am pleased to share on Tuesday following the storm, I think within less than an hour, we had the manager as well as members of the public works crews who worked tirelessly through the night and many into the early morning hours to get the roads reopened and to safeguard areas where we had power lines and other hazards down. So thank everyone for their diligence on that. So I do apologize for the audio. We're kind of awaiting a system upgrade, but unlike past nights, I don't have to yell tonight. I think I am projecting myself pretty well at this volume, so definitely a big step in the right direction on improvement in that. We'll start with item 2.1 tonight. We have a proclamation in the Township of Ferguson, Center County, Pennsylvania to recognize May 2025 as Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. Trying to think, do I just read that proclamation or, and apologize, I should have asked how we wanted to proceed with these.
Yeah, generally we would read it.
Okay. And I know we do have some representatives here tonight, so I would give them the opportunity if they wanted to read it, or I or one of the board members can read it, and then we can take some remarks after we adopt it. If you want to take it? Otherwise, I'm going to read it.
Okay. I've actually got it pulled up.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Okay. Proclamation, May 2025 Asian Pacific American Heritage Month proclamation. Whereas in 1992, Congress designated the month of May as Asian Pacific American Heritage Month in the United States to celebrate the significant contributions of people of Asian and Pacific Islander heritage to the growth, history, culture, and achievements of our nation. And whereas the 2025 Asian Pacific American Heritage Month theme, A Legacy of Leadership and Resilience, celebrates 4 decades of the Federal Asian Pacific American Council's service, honoring leaders whose hard work and perseverance have laid the foundation for future generations to thrive and overcome adversity, while addressing the barriers that continue to impact Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander advancement. And whereas the Township of Ferguson is fortunate to have residents with roots in diverse countries across the Asian continent and the Pacific Islands, including those who are recent immigrants as well as those who are first, second, third, fourth, and fifth generation Americans. And whereas people of Asian and Pacific Islander origin constitute approximately 19% of our population in Ferguson Township, enriching the ethnic and social fabric of our community with their diverse languages, cultures, and religious traditions, and through their leadership, creativity, talent, enterprise, and skill, they make invaluable contributions to building and supporting a vibrant and resilient economy in our township. And whereas people of Asian and Pacific Islander origin are our beloved friends and family, our cherished neighbors, and valued members of our Township of Ferguson, where we remain committed to embracing and accepting all of our residents from diverse backgrounds. And whereas the Township of Ferguson stands in solidarity with Asian Pacific Islander, Desi American, APIDA community in the township and around the world against systemic racism, xenophobia, and misogyny directed against them both in the past and in the present time. Now, therefore, the Ferguson Township Board of Supervisors does hereby proclaim May 2025 to be Asian Pacific American Heritage Month in the Township of Ferguson and encourages all residents to celebrate the history of the culture of Asian Pacific Islanders and Asian Pacific Americans and their vital contributions to our community.
All right. Do we have a motion to adopt this proclamation?
This is Patty, so moved.
Do we have a second?
This is Lisa, I'll second.
Got a motion by Ms. Stevens, second by Ms. Strickland. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed say no. Okay. The proclamation is adopted. At this time, I would entertain any members of the board or of the public that wanted to make some remarks. Yep. Feel free to step forward. State your name, municipality of residence.
Good evening. My name is Nalini Krishnakati. I'm a resident of State College and also a State College Borough Council member. I'm also one of the co-founders of the local Pan-APIDA Circle group, where APIDA stands for Asian Pacific Islander Desi American. I want to thank all of you for adopting this proclamation. And as you read in that, the Federal Asian Pacific American Council has chosen the theme for this year to be legacy of leadership and resilience. And in the words of the council, this is an opportunity to pay tribute to pioneers who often faced, who often overcame doubt, discrimination, weight of societal expectations to achieve things which and breakthroughs which laid the groundwork for those who followed and encouraged the next generation to dream boldly. And so what I wanted to do today actually was to share a few examples of leadership and resilience. These are often hidden stories, and so I hope I can get a few minutes to do that. I want to pay tribute to Wong Kim Ark, who was born in San Francisco, California in 1870 and sued the federal government when he was denied re-entry on the grounds that he could not be a citizen. His case actually resulted in the Supreme Court's seminal decision on March 28, 1898, that the government could not deny citizenship to anyone born in the United States. And this case is the foundation for birthright citizenship even today. Lieutenant Susan Ann Cuddy, born in Los Angeles in 1915, prevailed against anti-Asian sentiments during World War II to become the first Korean-American woman in the United States military and the first female Navy gunnery officer. Congressman Dalip Singh Sound, who came from India in 1920 as a graduate student to study mathematics at Berkeley, and then became a farmer because nobody would hire an Asian as a professor, then successfully lobbied to end the restrictions to citizenship for Indian and Filipino immigrants, became a citizen, was elected judge, and eventually became the first person of Asian descent to be elected to the US House of Representatives in 1957. He was also a Sikh American, so he was the first person from a different religion to be elected. Congresswoman Patsy Mink, lawyer born in Hawaii, was the first Asian American woman elected to Congress in 1965. She advocated for Asian Americans, women and children, even when it was at great potential risk to her political career. Former Secretary of Transportation Norman Mineta overcame racial injustice as a child of Japanese immigrants in a World War II internment camp, went on to serve in the US Army, Congress, and the cabinets of Presidents Bill Clinton and George Bush. So these are just some, very, very few examples, tip of the iceberg, right? But many of us also know of people like architect Maya Lin, who was born in the United States, designed both the Vietnam Memorial and the Civil Rights Memorial, and she did it when she was a grad student. Indian American Kalpana Chawla, who came here as a grad student, the first South Asian American to go to space, and who died in the Columbia disaster. Bangladeshi-born Muslim American graduate student who came as a graduate student, Fazlur Rahman Khan, who discovered the technology that is used to build all our tall buildings and is called the father of our modern skyscraper. So we had Muslim Americans, not Muslim Americans, people who were terrorists who happened to be Muslim who flew the plane into our skyscrapers, but it was also a Muslim American whose technology helped build those skyscrapers. We, of course, in technology, there are many, many people. If you're using email, the web-based email was invented by Sabir Bhatia, who came here as a student. But if you use YouTube or Yahoo, N95 masks, many other technologies, they were all have many Asian Americans contributing to them. I think everybody here knows about 16% of residents in Ferguson Township are from the Apida community. And I think it was last Sunday, I got to celebrate the achievements of Professor Jainendra Jain, who's a Ferguson Township resident, for recently getting the Wolf Prize in Physics. And many, many people who get the Wolf Prize actually go on to win the Nobel Prize. And this is an example of someone right here in Center County. We also know Apida Fest was held recently. We had more than 500 people participating, and that again has been a way to elevate stories, cultures, and experiences. And a real town gown experience with Penn State contributing, the local community, PRCC, and the Borough State College. And what I'm hoping, thank you for the time to share these stories, but what I'm hoping we can do in this month, which has been set aside to celebrate and understand this community, that we all get to learn more about these hidden stories, both of people from the past as well as people who are here right now as our neighbors and friends, and just get to know our common history and stories. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Donald Hahn. I'm from State College Borough. I am a Center County native, a State High graduate, and a Penn State alumni. I've been a local attorney since 1992, two-time winner of the Pennsylvania Bar Association Pro Bono Award, and former president of the Middle District Bankruptcy Bar Association. I was elected 3 times to State College Borough Council, once as its president, once as mayor, and I currently serve as a judge of the Magisterial District Court. I'd like to thank Ferguson Township for passing this this resolution recognizing Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. I'm of Korean American descent. My parents were born in Korea, and my dad came to teach math at Penn State. My mom came to raise a family, and they were both very proud, naturalized American citizens. I was born, as I said, in Center County in 1964. At that time, there were less than 1 million Asian Americans Now, over 60 years later, there are more than 20 million. Asia consists of 50 recognized nation states with almost 5 billion people, more than half the world's population, consisting of Christians, Muslims, Hindus, and Buddhists, where so many different languages are spoken, such as Arabic, Hindi, Punjabi, Bengali, Indonesian, Chinese, and Japanese. It would have been easier for Asian Americans to stay in Asia, closer to their homes, to practice religion like their ancestors did, and to speak the languages with which they are more familiar. Why do Asian Americans come to America? Basically, having been born here, I guess I'm not the best person to answer that. However, I truly believe that it's because America is still the land of educational and economic opportunities. There is an old saying in sports, in order to be the best, you need to compete against the best. Due to our tradition of competition and American academic freedom, America has the best universities and teachers in the world, and they attract the best students in the world. And many of those students choose to remain here and help America build and maintain what is, in my opinion, still the greatest economy in the world. I think competition, of course, goes both ways. And I think that, quite frankly, I think that the Asian Americans inject a new competitive spirit that basically helps also people who have been here longer stay on their game, so to speak. I think that I feel very proudly about both the Asian American contribution, but also the Americanness of that contribution. And I think that as we, as a nation, move forward, I think that it is a great partnership. And I thank you once again for acknowledging Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, whether in the room or from the board, even anyone online? That's Mr. Patterson.
Well, thank you, Councilmember Krishna Kudi and Judge Hahn, for recognizing American history, American progress, and speaking to the enhancement of our community when we learn and appreciate world cultures. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, item 2.2, a proclamation of the Township of Ferguson, Center County, Pennsylvania, to recognize Mount Nittany Health Week as May 12th through the 16th, 2025. And I will read the proclamation. This is a proclamation of the Township of Ferguson, Center County, Pennsylvania, to recognize, pardon me, the dates changed from what was on the title there, but I'm just going to go with it. May 11th to 17th is Mount Nittany Health Week. Whereas the week of May 11th through the 17th is recognized as National Hospitals Week, a time to celebrate the vital contributions of hospitals, health systems, and healthcare workers to our communities. Whereas Mount Nittany Health, with its 2,500 employees, including more than 220 providers, has provided more than 120 years of service and outstanding healthcare to our region. And whereas Mount Nittany Health Team is a trusted partner in bringing compassionate, expert care in serving the healthcare needs of our families, neighbors, friends, and whereas Mount Nittany Health welcomes all patients, visitors, staff, providers, students, and volunteers without exception, embracing the values of teamwork and respect. And now, therefore, be it resolved, the Ferguson Township Board of Supervisors does hereby proclaim May 11th through the 17th, 2025 as Mount Nittany Health Week and commends the board, leadership, and entire Mount Nittany Health Team for its record of service to the region. Now, therefore, an authenticated copy of this resolution signed by Ferguson Township shall be provided to Mount Nittany Health. Do I have a motion to adopt the proclamation?
This is Matt, so moved.
And did we have a second?
This is Mario, second.
I got a motion by Mr. Heller, seconded by Mr. Patterson. Any discussion?
I'm going to
Yes.
abstain. I'm going to abstain from this, and I'll just be supportive of this in the next proclamation for Hospital Week.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? All those in favor of adopting the proclamation, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. And we had one abstention. Yes, we do. I believe we have a representative of Mount Nittany Health here tonight, so open the floor for any remarks that they would like to make.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Thank you. I'm Drew Brungard. I'm the Director of Human Resources at Mount Nittany Health. I've actually been with the organization since 2013, having come back to the region, attending my undergraduate here at Penn State, but originally from the other side of Route 45 in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, but have grown up, my family members being many generations of Penn State alum and having traveled up through this area. I know the importance of Mount Nittany Medical Center, Mount Nittany Health to the Center region. So I'd like to thank you, Ferguson Township Commissioners and those residents of Ferguson Township and or the surrounding area for your attendance here today, for your continued support of Mount Nittany Health. We do truly value our partnership and our shared commitment to the well-being of the community and the surrounding regions. We are deeply honored that you are recognizing Mount Nittany Health Week. Having been with the organization, as I said, for going on 12 years this July, and been the project manager of Mount Nittany Health for the last 3 years, I can tell you how important this is to the employees, the frontline employees on a day-to-day basis. We have grown from 2020 from 2,300 employees to 2,600 employees, and we try to take an opportunity to celebrate all those employees during National Health System Week. National Hospital Week has been observed since 1953, and is a time to celebrate hospital workers, more than 7 million individuals nationwide who support patient care across the United States. Locally, Mount Nittany Health Week shines the light on our own incredible team. As an independent, community-governed health system, Mount Nittany Health has proudly served our region since 1902, adapting, growing, and innovating to meet the evolving needs of our neighbors. Looking ahead, we're excited about the construction of our new 10-story tower, an investment that will truly transform care in our region. Mount Nittany Health has also been working on several other exciting projects, including renovating the Mount Nittany Health Pediatric Office here in Boalsburg. Last year, we also opened Mount Nittany Health Express Care in the Hills Plaza, and our new location, Mount Nittany Health Top Trees. Again, on behalf of Mount Nittany Health, I want to thank everyone here today and those online, and thank you for honoring the dedication of more than our 2,600 employees who serve compassion and excellence every single day. And if any of you are or know a nurse, and having it being Nurses Week as well too, please take time to thank them as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other remarks from the board or anyone in the room? Not seeing any. We will at the end, just before public comment, recess for any photo ops as well as any questions. If there's anyone from the media here covering the night. So, yeah, thank you. Next, we have a proclamation in Township of Ferguson, Center County, Pennsylvania, to recognize May 12th to the 16th, 2025 as National Hospitals Week. This proclamation was recommended while we just recognize Mount Nittany Health. We do understand we have also in the community Geisinger, and we had recently, Geisinger, Penn State Health. We also had the addition of Penn Highlands Healthcare within the past year. And even more recently, it does appear UPMC is also making a presence here in State College. So we want to recognize all of our hospital systems during National Hospitals Week. So before I proceed with the proclamation, anyone from the board want to read the proclamation? Or?
Sure.
We'll give this one to Omari. Okay.
Whereas National Hospital Week recognizes the vital role hospitals and healthcare professionals play in delivering essential care to individuals and communities across the nation. And Whereas the observance began as a day of recognition on May 12th to honor the birthday of nurse pioneer Florence Nightingale and to encourage trust in hospitals following the Spanish flu outbreak of 1918. In 1953, the American Hospital Association expanded it into a week-long celebration. And whereas hospitals provide a wide range of critical services, including emergency care, surgery, mental health support, long-term treatment, and more. And whereas this week honors the dedication, compassion, and resilience of hospital staff, including doctors, nurses, technicians, and support personnel who care for patients under often demanding conditions. And whereas all types of hospitals, including children's, veterans, psychiatric, and community facilities, are essential to the health and well-being of our society. And whereas the work of hospital personnel is critical in helping to bring new lives into the world, saving lives, supporting recovery, and providing comfort during difficult moments. And now, therefore, the Ferguson Township Board of Supervisors does hereby proclaim the week of May 11 through 17, 2025 as National Hospital Week in Ferguson Township, and encourages all residents to recognize and appreciate the contributions of our hospital heroes.
All right. Do we have a motion to adopt the proclamation?
This is Patty, so moved.
This is Mario, second.
All right, got a motion by Ms. Stevens, second by Mr. Patterson. Any discussion?
No, thank you. I just wanted to say thank you because it was sort of all-encompassing of all the different hospital systems, you know, whether it be a rehabilitative hospital or mental health hospitals, et cetera. So this one I very much appreciate, and it was beautiful. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yes. I'm going to ask a question, just a quick process question. So any organization can bring a proclamation forth and request it to be on our agenda. Is that accurate, Madam Manager?
During my tenure here as manager, we have never denied a request from a member within our community representing an agency to do a proclamation. We have always accepted and continue to do so unless the board states otherwise.
Because they're like this, which is great, you know, recognizing the people that are out there working every single day. Okay, very good. And then I think the only, I'll just get on a mini soapbox to encourage our healthcare professionals to keep doing what you're doing and also improve, find ways to bring down healthcare costs, find other ways to encourage individuals to be healthy. I think we've got a lot of, I think the term was sick care, and I don't want to mean that to be derogatory, just more so like we're treating the sick. We need to treat the healthy and make sure the healthy stay healthy. But thanks for all you do.
Preventative care is very key.
Precisely.
Yep. Anyone else? All right. If not, all those in favor of adopting the proclamation, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Okay. Do we have, I just want to open the floor, any healthcare representatives from other systems that might be here, any medical professionals that may want to address the board, share some remarks? You're welcome to speak up now. Okay. Not CNA. We'll move then to the other page here. A proclamation of the Township of Ferguson, Center County, Pennsylvania to recognize May 18th to the 24th, 2025 as Emergency Management Services Week. Anyone want to read this proclamation? Otherwise, I can go for it. All right. We have a proclamation of the Township of Ferguson, Center County, Pennsylvania to recognize May 18th to the 24th, 2025 as Emergency Medical Services Week. Whereas emergency medical services is a vital public service, and whereas the members of emergency medical services teams are ready to provide life-saving care to those in need 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and whereas access to quality emergency care dramatically improves the survival and recovery rate of those who experience sudden illness or injury, and whereas emergency medical services fills healthcare gaps by providing important out-of-hospital care, including preventative medicine, follow-up care, and access to telemedicine, and whereas the emergency medical services system consists of first responders, emergency medical technicians, paramedics, emergency medical dispatchers, firefighters, police officers, educators, administrators, pre-hospital nurses, emergency physicians, trained members of the public, and other out-of-hospital medical care providers. And whereas the members of the emergency medical services teams, whether career or volunteer, engage in thousands of hours of specialized training and continuing education to enhance their life-saving skills. And whereas it is appropriate to recognize the value and the accomplishments of emergency medical services providers by designating the Emergency Medical Services Week, and whereas the 51st anniversary of EMS Week theme is EMS Week, We Care for Everyone. Now, therefore, the Ferguson Township Board of Supervisors does hereby proclaim the week of May 18th to the 24th, 2025 to be Emergency Medical Services Week in Ferguson Township, and encourages all residents to join the township in recognizing pre-hospital and hospital emergency medical service practitioners for the services they provide in our community. Do we have a motion to adopt the proclamation?
This is, go ahead. This is Patty Silva.
This is Lisa, I'll second.
Okay, got a motion by Ms. Stevens, second by Ms. Strickland. Any discussion?
Thank you. Thank you to all
Yes.
folks in here. And I'm glad it covers a wide breadth because everybody is such an important component to emergency medical care. So truly appreciate the work they do. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll add that this proclamation is a good verbal thing to do and to thank you, and I also thank all those out there, but we have to do more. There's a lot of fundraising for those services.
Yes.
And it is essential service. And so I think we in the township, I know I'm on the public safety for COG, and I'm kind of working on that. I think Ferguson needs to take the lead and drive toward a essential service model, whatever that may be, that it's treated like one.
Yeah. I was going to say, I recently had attended a Center Lifelinks banquet, and I think like even some of their volunteers and paid personnel, like especially some of the volunteers, I think I was hearing like 700 volunteer hours in a year. Like they're putting a lot of serious time into these services, whether in volunteer or paid roles, and just thank them and any EMS personnel for their contributions to our community. Also encourage even young people. My cousin recently, who's 15, just went down to their local EMS station and actually kind of found a passion for EMS. So they're doing some volunteering with their local EMS company now. So find ways to either just familiarize yourself with the local EMS services in town, or even step in to see where you may be a fit, if you want to volunteer or something. So definitely encourage that. Any other remarks? If not, all those in favor of adopting the proclamation, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Okay. Proclamation passes. Is there any EMS personnel in attendance tonight that would like to make some remarks? Not CNA. That will move us on to our last announcement and proclamation. And let me see. Did I have Okay, we do have something here. Okay. Tonight, we have the recognition of Jeff Ressler for his service as the Ferguson Township zoning officer. And we do have a certificate of appreciation as well as a commemorative plaque tonight. So I guess at this time, anyone want to read the certificate of appreciation?
Happy to do so.
On over to Matt. It is
Got it right here.
Got it.
So, whereas Mr. Jeffrey Ressler has been the Ferguson Township zoning administrator and has served the local community for 31 years. And whereas in the role, Jeffrey was responsible for fairly and accurately assisting in development, administration, and enforcement of the program of land management in the township with the intent of promotion, prevention, and preservation of the community. And whereas Jeffrey is a resident of Central Pennsylvania who has demonstrated the highest level of civic responsibility, and now therefore, the Township of Ferguson does hereby recognize and congratulates Mr. Jeffrey Ressler for his dedication and many years of service, as well as his contribution to the local community.
Do we have a motion to adopt this?
With pleasure. So Mari, so moved.
This is Patty, I'll second.
Got a motion by Mr. Patterson, second by Ms. Stevens. Any remarks?
The only thing I'll say, and I can't speak to it, 31 years of service to anything, I'm a little young, well, I'm not experienced enough for that, but I will say that it's not just a single human doing that. It's a family, it's a community, and so I just want to thank your community and your family for allowing you to be here for such a long time. Thank you, all.
Anyone else?
I just will share personally, thank you. As a resident of Ferguson Township, as somebody who had no idea what they were doing when they were putting a porch on their house, it was good to have somebody help guide the way and help me understand what was going on and who I needed to talk to and how the process worked. So sincerely from that, thank you. And I know on behalf of many other residents that you've helped along the way, thank you. Appreciate it.
I'll echo those sentiments and say Jeff and I met a long time ago when I had a business and was working with the Planning and Zoning Office. So I have, that working relationship, and then as a member of the Planning Commission for a long time. Jeff's just a pleasure to work with, and we're just so appreciative of the time that he gave to the township. Yes. I hope you enjoy your upcoming time now.
They've said it all. So thank you, Jeff, for everything that you've done.
And I'll just say a special thanks on behalf of staff and truly from me directly. Jeff, I will certainly enjoy thinking about you in this next phase in your retirement and knowing that you and Kathy are retiring together. And your dog Tucker is probably just going to be so tickled to have both of you there. But I will genuinely miss walking past you in the hallway and seeing you in the lunchroom, or just getting to hear the stories, the various stories of you running and the marathons and half marathons that you and Kathy have done. Kathy, I've got to hear so many beautiful stories of you and your family. And I will most importantly miss how genuine you are and how sincere you are. And that you only remark on things that truly matter to you. And that type of genuine sincerity is it's just something to be praised in today's world. So thank you. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your kindness and just being a good human. Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, and Jeff, just thank you for your dedication to our community. 31 years. We've done a lot of growing from what I've recognized in 31 years, even just within the 10 to 13 that I've been here in the township. And I remember we had that big zoning and SADO rewrite, going from that big thick book to something that's actually on a tablet for you to easily stream through. So yeah, just thank you so much, and it's been great working with you and just having you on board. So before we invite Jeff up for any remarks, if you would like to, we'll take a motion to adopt the certificate of appreciation. We'll take the vote. So all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say no. All right. It's adopted. Had anything you wanted to? Leave it totally up to you.
Well, I am truly honored and humbled to have this meeting and be asked to come here for this recognition. I started back December 20th, 1993. And I thought to myself, I'll stay 2 years. Well, 31 years later, I'm here. I grew to love the township and the people I worked with, people in the public. I love serving people, and I couldn't have stayed as long as I did without so many people to work with, the great managers over the years, 3 of them, all my directors, including last but not least Kimberly, for a short period of time, and all the staff I worked with. I couldn't have done what I did and last as long as I did without the help and support of everybody in the township. So, and truly, I can say honestly, my wife will attest to this, there are many days I come home and said, I have the best job in the world. And I truly mean that because it was just fun. But there were times that weren't fun too. But we grew through them times too. So I always cherish the memories here. I've worked here almost half my life. It's hard thinking about that now. And like I said, the 2 years became the longest 2 years of my life. So thank you so much for the privilege of keeping me here and allowing me to work here and to grow and to watch the township grow all these years. It's been a pleasure.
As well as a signed certificate from Township.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yes, my pleasure. Thank you so much, Jeff.
Thank you.
And with that, at this time, I will recess us for about 5 minutes for some pictures and, yeah. And, I wasn't on. Okay, we'll call back to order the Ferguson Township Board of Supervisors meeting. We will now start with public comment. At this time, we welcome members from the public to address the board for items that are not on the agenda. We ask when you give comments to come up front, state your name and municipality of residence, and to keep your comments to about 5 minutes. So at this time, we'll go start in the room. Anyone want to address the board? Seeing none, we'll go online. Anyone online wanted to address the board, you may unmute your microphone or raise your virtual hand. Wait to be recognized by the chair. Okay. Not seeing any. Next, we'll take the approval of the minutes from the April 15, 2025 Board of Supervisors meeting. Pending no corrections, do we have a motion to approve those minutes?
This is Patty, so moved.
Do we have a second?
This is Matt, I'll second.
Okay, got a motion by Ms. Stevens, second by Mr. Heller. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed say no. Item 5.1, reports and presentations for our diversity, equity, and inclusionary activities and acknowledgements. For the month of May, we have Bike Month, National Physical Fitness and Sports Month, Jewish American Heritage Month, Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, and then we have Public Work Services Week from the 4th through the 10th, Police Week from the 11th to the 17th, which the township did adopt a proclamation or last meeting for, and EMS Week, the 18th through the 24th, Public Works Week, the 18th through the 24th, which we adopted a proclamation for as well in our last meeting, and then Memorial Day will be May 26th. Tonight, authorities, boards, and commission reports. We have a presentation on the Parks and Recreation Authority presented by Mr. Corey Gracie Griffith.
Good evening, everyone. Good to see you all. Thankfully, first time in a while, it's been a kind of slow spell with the authority, which is nice, actually, for a change. In my report, you can see updates from the last few meetings, pointing out highlights. I think major things that have happened, the completion of the education building in Millbrook Marsh triggered a renewal of the lease with Penn State, which was approved by the authority. It's another 40-year term on that lease. I think one of the kind of major shifts in our conversation, we had been having conversations about the Hess softball complex bathroom situation and potential alternatives to the current porta potties. I think that has now led into a conversation about the master plan for that particular park, which the authority actually approved back in 2022, but due to other pressing things that were going on with parks, namely Whitehall, that it was put on the side, and COG itself never actually approved the master plan. So just a heads up, it's coming back to you all to take a look at. I think it's already been to Parks Capital, and then it should be coming to the main COG forum shortly. I think my only concern, as with all things that you see coming out of the authority, is where the funding is going to come from to actually execute this particular master plan, as it is a major change to the existing layout of the park. So, going on that. In the March meeting, really, again, more discussion about Hess, but then looked at, we approved funding for both the structural design services and testing to look at one of the bridges at Millbrook Marsh. Again, this is part of the continued deterioration. This case, not part of the boardwalk, but the bridge that actually is near the intersection of Puddingtown and Orchard that connects sort of to the back of where the education building is now. That's having some structural issues, and so we're spending a very small amount of money to investigate what potentially can be done to shore that up. At our April meeting, we didn't have a quorum, so one of the things that got pushed to a special meeting was approving a stream-based stabilization project for Slab Cabin. As I think many members know, Slab Cabin up through College Township, sort of north of Millbrook Marsh, has been going through in-stream restoration. In order to do that in-stream work, they had to sort of level out one side of the bank and clear it so the equipment could get there. So this is a project mostly funded by Clearwater Conservancy and some grants in order to essentially restabilize that bank and plant trees again there. So, yeah, I'm going to think finally, Ken, if you haven't looked at it yet, I would encourage you to look at that asphalt plan that's coming up, as it will be coming to you all shortly for a vote and approval. The last thing that I wanted to point out is that the director of Southern Region Parks and Recreation has started providing us with new reports. And so for those of you who are interested in the numbers of Parks and Recreation, I know that's a question that comes up quite a bit from my time sitting as a supervisor, is how much are our residents using these facilities that we pay into? The director is starting to quantify those things in monthly reports. And so if you're interested in some of that information, they don't have everything yet, but she's starting to put those numbers into it used to be a very long narrative format, but I put a sample of it in your packet so you can see it. For example, they have the numbers this month for the active adult center, and our township is making up 15% of the participation in that. So, despite it being located at the mall, which I think again has always been one of our concerns. So, are our constituents using these facilities even though they're not close to us? So, you get a little more information about that if you want to look at those reports. Happy to take any questions that you might have.
Mr. Heller.
First, I appreciate the report. What I wanted to say is really related to Hess Field, and you mentioned the finance, right? Where's the money coming from? I would hope that in conversations across all of our committees, because this touches so many of our committees, that we keep in mind not only the strategic plan for Hess Field, but that it's part of a larger ecosystem with two huge facilities already anchored on either side, both within about 7 minutes away. What does that whole strategy look like when we take into account these multiple areas that are already, contributing to almost the same type of sports, etc.? So not just looking, and what I recommend is not just looking, of course, at Hess Field and its strategic plan, but the regional strategic plan of those facilities that already exist and are already in many ways further down the road than Hess Field. Where does the investment need to be? So just something I'll be looking at, I know, in Finance Committee going forward here. So thank you.
Ms. Stevens.
My comments were, thank you for always thinking about where is the money coming from, because I think we've really reached a point where it's about taking care of what we own. I think that was even in the comp plan or something of that sort. And as these things are, so rather than expanding and moving into next phases, I think we really need to be mindful of taking care of what we have right now. And the other comment I had was I'm so excited about the numbers that we were seeing, the new report that Christy's been generating. And I've heard rumors that for the Active Adult Center that some funding will be cut from the county. And when I was looking at what was attached to your report, it had said there were like some other municipalities maybe that participate. So if the county isn't going to give us funds for them, will those municipalities want to chip in for the Active Adult Center so we don't have to cut services there? Just curious.
That is a question I can ask.
Yeah, thank you.
can go.
Ms. Strickland.
Thanks for the numbers on participation by municipality. Please thank staff for including those. I think it's really insightful for us to see where the breakdown is in participation. So I look forward to those numbers even expanding. And then on HES, I appreciate Matt's comment. I wanted to dig in a little bit and see, so will that plan go straight to the general forum, do you know, or will it stop by facilities first? Or Parks Capital?
That I don't remember,
Okay.
sorry. I know it went to Parks Capital, I think.
I don't think.
Has it yet? Okay.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Okay.
I think it's definitely making a stop there first before
Okay.
it comes to general forum.
So that would be a question, I guess, to all of us and all of our committees to, for facilities to review that, for, there won't be a budget with it, but for finance to see it, I'm not certain there would be any estimates with a master plan, I think, and maybe there will be, I don't know, I haven't seen it, so, I guess for it to make it stops along the way, because we have these, siloed decision-making processes still, and so however we can, at least with this one park, get some more eyes on the approval before it gets to general forum, I think would be helpful. So I guess between, your meeting updates and then our committees, figuring out where that plan's going to be viewed and reviewed before it gets to general forum. I'm probably the only one who won't see it on my committees. I don't think Lucy or the MPO will see it at all. So I'll just leave that there. But I think, I'm sure that was a pretty thorough master plan. And I do remember parts of it. So I think, that was a bit ago. And then I just wanted to touch on the discussion we had at our last meeting, because we got a report from Parks Capital and the Parks Governance Ad Hoc Committee. And I wanted to, I guess, touch base with you as our liaison and just make sure you're getting some feedback on the authority side from those meetings and the conversations, and just ask you what kind of input are you all having on those discussions? And then I guess to kind of, reflect back to you what we had discussed last time, which was mostly about Millbrook and, that decision-making process, but others, that's just kind of the big example right now. But you're getting regular updates from that committee? And
Yes. I think one of the things that I still struggle with is that the Parks and Recreation Director is looking for feedback from us as an authority about decisions that have budget implications, and that but there's no budget information yet, right? And so we as an authority are being asked to make recommendations. We can use the HES bathroom situation as an example, where we even had some loose price information, right, at least, so we could say like, oh yeah, that one's gonna be way too expensive and this one's less expensive. But even then, it's very hard, from my particular point of view as an authority member, to make a recommendation when I don't know what I'm making a recommendation against, right? Like, is there a fixed pool of money that we have to spend on parks projects right now? If there is, then I might not want to do any of the HES bathrooms. I'm the only one who sits in that camp right now on the authority in terms of making that kind of recommendation. So I think that's the challenge for me personally, being an authority member, given the structure, the way it's set up, is that we are usually being asked to make the first recommendation, right? To say like, this is what the authority thinks should happen with the HES bathroom situation, with the master plan for HES, even though that was voted on before I was an authority member. And even getting information about the Millbrook Marsh Boardwalk. I think I keep pushing to ask if we can have a different decision-making process because I grow concerned about as I have been when I was on the Board of Supervisors, that these things seem to, build up like a stone rolling down a hill, right? Now the director and co-executive director tried to reassure me during those conversations that there are lots of breakpoints built in to, check in on that, but it's still a little frustrating. I keep wanting a different structure, one in which we're given potentially even a budget to us as the authority to then be able to make a recommendation of, well, if COG is only going to approve $3 million of capital projects, then let us, as the authority members who are closest to the activities of the Parks and Recreation and the facilities, in theory, give you a recommendation then about how to spend that $3 million. That is not the way it's currently working.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because that's the struggle, and I know Patty puts in a lot of time on that committee, the ad hoc governance committee, trying to get to that point. And so I think the Hess bathrooms is a good example of the process, because it came, and how a better process could be, because that did come with some options. And as a board member here, I want the professional staff input on that too. And it seemed like there was comment from the authority, there was professional staff input, there were numbers assigned to everything, and it came to the finance committee, and there was discussion around it. So that, that did seem to work a little bit better. I guess I just encourage these, this communication, particularly as Patty keeps moving forward in her role on that committee, and really they're getting down to kind of designing some of these documents now. So, I'm sure we'll talk about it here, and just making sure all that information is shared. Back to you.
I would like that.
If I could just add to that, is there a fixed pool of money? I love that you asked that question, but it's sad that you have to ask that question, right? This falls back on the finance committee and others to, make things as clear as possible, and maybe have some different conversations in COG about what is available and what should be available as we go through some of these processes. So things I'll be taking back to the finance committee, and I appreciate hearing that.
Yeah, I think in particular, I think one of my concerns about the Hess master plan is that it includes a bathroom facility in it, right? There's a centralized building that would be on the probably most expensive end of that spectrum of bathrooms that we looked at, in terms of there being a permanent facility with running water and a sewage line. So I looked at that and I was like, but wait, we had this whole other conversation already about these bathrooms, and I don't know that that's it's not what I would recommend for that particular facility. So there's a piece of me that's like, I don't like.
Yeah, if I may, back to, just because you could doesn't mean you should, right? That's really what, hey, we could do this thing because it's in the plan, but should we? Right? You need the context of what's going on to really make those decisions. And again, things I'll be following up on.
And I will say to the director, to the Park and Rec director's credit, that she has also been really clear about that. That like, this is a plan. This is not we are going to do all of these things, and immediately, that there will be phases, and that'll be for later conversations. So I appreciated her recognition of that fact.
Mr. Patterson.
I guess I'll flip a little bit. I had a constituent alert me to the fact that there's been that they requested field time, and I guess other organizations are getting field times. No issue. However, I guess the order of field time, it's CRPR programs first, and then youth nonprofit programs, and then adult and other for-profit entities. And so I think some of the field times requested are being used by adults, perhaps by some of the other organizations, maybe out of order. And so if you could just maybe bring that up and make sure it's being followed to the T. Just try to consistently bring that concern to me.
Okay.
And I really appreciate the numbers. This is good, and looking forward to more.
Yes, I've already pushed that like it's great to see it monthly, but I needed to compare it to something, and so I've already sort of been pushing for, can I see several months of data, or how this compares to how we were last year, to get a better sense of what those numbers mean, but it's a start.
Anyone else?
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 5.3A, Mr. Corey Gracie Griffiths report, I moved to 5.2, so that will move us then to 5.3B. Land Use and Community Infrastructure Committee, their meeting was canceled. So 5.3C will be the Facilities Committee.
Facilities, just an update on kind of the work in progress, all on time, in budget and scope. There was a recommendation from the committee. My final thing is recommendation from the committee to change the role title. It went from, when I first started, it was they were hiring for a facilities manager. They couldn't find anyone, so they downgraded it to a facilities coordinator, kind of to get a bigger pool of applicants. They got a really good applicant. That person's there now and is really acting as a facilities manager. So there's a recommendation to upgrade that role again. And there may be some adjustments to that person. That's a personnel thing, but the role itself and what it was originally envisioned to do was a manager role. And so that's the recommendation came out of there. Nothing else from facilities.
Mr. Heller.
If you're doing the work, you should be recognized for it. So that's great that they've been able to step into that role. So, thank you.
Any others? Next is the Executive Committee. Don't necessarily have anything further beyond what was in general forum, but I just want to say, regarding the matter of the leaked email from a couple weeks ago with Mike Tilka's resignation, it troubles me as your executive committee representative and the COG chair that within a 2-week time, we have had 2 incidents of elected officials stating what I find to be disparaging remarks against Center Region COG staff. And then this email of Mike Tilka's resignation letter being sent out to the media before Mike Tilka was even afforded the opportunity to inform all of his staff that he was leaving was unacceptable. I've heard the argument, yeah, it was public record, but the fact that the boss didn't get the opportunity to talk one-on-one with all his staff, and the ones that were out of the office, found out through the media, that just creates a lot of challenges between management and staff, and I just say, I think, like Ben said, we got to treat the staff as humans. If we have any concerns with staff, the best practice is to go to the executive director because it's just most respectful to all parties involved. The HR committee was going to take up revisions of policy changes regarding our meeting etiquette guidelines. That's been pushed back, but it is something that I am working with the executive director and HR on. So take any questions or feedback.
Well, I think that working on HR policies, wouldn't that apply specifically to the staff at COG? The HR policy? I'm just wondering if there shouldn't be some sort of training or something through COG about, for elected officials. Because we're sort of a different body than staff. So I don't know if we use a Pennsylvania Municipal League or something. Do you know what I mean? Some sort of training like we have here that Century's provided for us, a board training or elected official training on etiquette and things like that. I mean, I realize at the beginning of the year we kind of go through the motions of that, but anyway.
It was my understanding early on that the meeting etiquette, the standing meeting etiquette policy would be revised through HR, but I can follow up with the director if that is going to be redirected to a different committee. Training, that is a good idea. Like I've heard a lot of calls from other elected officials on reviewing policy, but I think training it would be another good option as well. Just proper procedures for especially handling of legally privileged matters such as personnel or litigation. I would presume all elected officials are aware that you don't just go disseminating employee information, but
then maybe even signing a form so that there could be some sort of corrective action or I don't know what to, but something up. I'm not sure, right?
Some level of accountability, making sure everyone understands the policy, they've received the policy, and
Yes.
Mr. Heller.
And if I may, a recommendation, because I was just pulling up the email, et cetera, that kind of kicked all these off. And sometimes a header that says, please do not share, in big, bold, 15-point font is enough to remind people this is something you shouldn't share. So I think training's always important. But also at the end point here, the last touch, when an email like that is sent out, what's the last thing we can do? And we can put banners, opening the email, closing the email, in the header of the email, all those things to go ahead and make sure that we are reminded, because maybe it was a misstep, an unintentional, non-nefarious misstep. I don't know, but but want to be cognizant to see what we can do along the entire chain to prevent it. So,
That's a good idea.
Thank you.
Yeah. So,
I'll just say that we don't do that. This board doesn't do that, right? We don't share emails, we don't forward emails on personnel matters, right?
I don't share nothing.
I was going to say,
That's okay.
As the HR professional on the team, I know there's legal repercussions for disseminating employee data. But
I know you in the executive committee and the HR committee, you'll kind of address it. I just want to make sure for our township, our community, this board does not share any information on legal, personnel, law enforcement, nothing that is not in this meeting, period.
Yep.
True.
So I want to make that very clear.
Right. Mm-hmm. And there's law backing all this, and explaining what is legally privileged and what and when, if anything, comes to the public record. So, anything else? Definitely take those into consideration. I appreciate that feedback, and we'll work through this constructively, respectfully, and Parks and Recreation Governance Committee.
All right, thank you. We are working on, we had a first draft that was presented to us from the COG staff about articles of agreement between the Center Region Parks Authority and COG. And of course, each municipality will have a little bit of a nuanced MOU within that. But we took a first look at that, and that was basically what the meeting revolved around. There was some discussion about identifying regional parks as opposed to municipal parks. And COG staff had unearthed some sort of document from like the 1980s, I think, about what goes into designating something as a regional park, and that's going to be shared with us. We're supposed to look at this first draft of this document and bring it back again for our next meeting where we'll discuss it more, but then once we get it hammered out, it will come back to us as a board to discuss. So that's where we are. I think that one of the things they were interested in is having a designated person at each municipality that would be back and forth with all things parks, which I think we have already as our assistant township manager, so that's sort of an easy. So that was really about it. It was just that discussion.
Yeah.
Do you think after your next meeting, they'll have documents prepared for, not ready to go, but to come back for comment?
A draft, yeah,
Municipalities?
a draft
Okay.
document that they will have us bring back to each of our own boards for comments.
Okay.
Absolutely, yeah.
Good.
Okay.
The earlier that comments can be made on those, the better. So
Yes.
I agree.
I agree.
And we can take the drafts with the understanding that they are very preliminary drafts too. So if that's any concern,
Right.
can assure them.
And I think this is a very important procedure that we're going through, because as I was talking to another elected official on a different matter, we are a growing community and have been a growing community, and considering the COG is over 50 years old, there is things like documents from the 80s that could definitely use a lot of review and update to just be clearer and more modern with today.
Right, and I think that was the other thing, is the frequency of updating some of these documents too. I mean, realizing that, every 10 years we do a census, et cetera,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. So these things are important. But the other thing I meant to say is, we did have a big discussion too, through all of this, is assuming good intent, like through all of our work, and how we sort of get that phrase into some of our documents, and so that's where we are. It's always really super fascinating discussions, but anyway, it's good. Moving forward, slowly, but moving forward.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
It's
Thank
not
you.
easy work.
Any other comments? Good, I felt like I spoke out of turn. I usually go last.
How dare you?
I know, bad chair. All right, that concludes that. So that will move us to unfinished business. We will have a follow-up on a board member request 2025 revenue consideration, and the township manager is recognized.
Thank you. So provided with the agenda packet is a brief narrative summarizing some of the observations that were had as part of an assessment conducted by staff. And while there is a much lengthier report that we could have put together, it really kind of drills down to the township currently is operating under Act 511, also referred to as the, and I have to look because the Local Tax Enabling Act, right? So acronym LTEA. I often will refer to it as Act 511. And there's very specific taxes that we can impose. And so even as part of legislation described as a second-class township, and so even as a home rule charter, while we can have the flexibility, for example, to increase earned income tax, we still are heavily we're heavily mandated to follow the limitations within the statute. So with that said, what I would ask the board to give consideration to, recognizing that we are looking for increased options to increase our revenue, we could submit a letter to PML and see if they would consider some level of advocacy that would allow for what initially was brought to the township by Supervisor Patterson, which is to impose a tax on corporations. And corporations are actually, and I can certainly ask our finance director to weigh in more, but corporations are not considered a tax that we have access to levy as a result of the bond, or corporations are not treated as salary, which is, in fact, they're treated as bonds or investments. And so we cannot impose at the local level, only the state and federal level, just based on how the tax structure defines the corporation. That's a very high level summary, but I'll look to Todd to see if the high level summary is incorrect. And we can unpack that, and I'm happy to meet one-on-one. But I think if we're looking for a long game, right, we could certainly try to see if there are agencies that would consider advocating for changes to the legislation. There are things that we can impose, such as like an amusement tax. That is also an observation that was identified as part of the assessment. But in our township, for example, you know, the only area that might be considered, you know, an area for assessing an amusement tax or amusement fee would be at Progress Days, and I just don't know that it would be worth the effort to impose that. Unlike College Township, for example, they can impose an amusement tax. They have the Bryce Jordan Center there. That is often when looking to see who's raising taxes in the center region. If College Township is not, the next thing one might do is look to see what they generated in revenue as part of their amusement tax or amusement fee. So just kind of putting that into perspective, that is an option that we could consider, that we could, that would be within our authority, but we just don't have a BJC. But still certainly something that we could consider. I just don't know that the effort that we would invest in the short term would yield the long-term gains that we're looking for. Another option, of course, sales tax, liquor tax, all things that if Ferguson Township hasn't had these discussions, there are certainly other municipalities in the center region, such as the State College Borough, I believe, from time to time will have these conversations. So those are areas to which we could also see if there are agencies such as PML that would want to give consideration to advocating for legislation changes, but there is not a tax that could be considered in the short term that would yield the results that I think we're looking for in terms of what's a creative option for us to assess a tax that might create an equitable, if you will, impact on our residents or visitors or establishments, commercial establishments. That said, action for this evening, and of course I would consider the board, or encourage the board to consider ongoing conversations, but if there's some level of action that we're looking for this evening, I'm happy to write a letter to PML and see if they would be willing to consider adding to the list of resolutions that they, provide later in the year, advocating that Ferguson, either that there be consideration to see if there would be changes to legislation that would support a change to the tax law that would allow local municipalities to impose a tax on corporations. Again, that's the long game, and that's if it were to even come to fruition. And or a letter in support of exploring options such as a liquor tax or sales tax, if that is in fact what the board is even interested in. But I would say in the short term, let's identify maybe some letters to see if we would gain support for agencies to consider advocating on our behalf to change legislation at the state level that might give us increased flexibility. Understanding it may not happen, but that would be an action item that we might consider. And with that, I'm happy to answer questions.
I've got some, but
Please.
okay.
Just a friendly
And I will say I will look to the finance director and our solicitor who's been part of the team to kind of work through some of these discussions and assessments.
And just one friendly amendment, I'll let you go, and that is it's distributions from corporations. So if I am a member of an LLC, I receive a distribution. That's not taxed at the local level. And it is at the state and federal level. So there's a little bit of inconsistency between those three entities. And I do believe that somebody that perhaps only receives dollars from distributions of an LLC might not be paying any earned income tax as a result. And so maybe that's an extreme example, but it's one that we should certainly, I just want to make that amendment. So
And that is a wonderful segue into the question that I have, and I think we've been asking maybe for me, I've been wanting to see, like we have with zoning, we have an acceptable use list. We've got a list of all the things you can do in this type of zone. And then we have the things that you have to go in front of somebody to ask for permission. Then you got things that aren't even on the list. I'd love to see that list specifically related. Okay, LLCs, you can tax those, but you can't tax these other types of versions. And this isn't something that I expect anybody to pull out of their back pocket this evening, but just to have an idea of what potentials there are in there before we engage. Yeah, I think it's important to engage with PMEL and have the conversation to maybe ramp into something. But in the short term, I would just like to know what we could have access to and what we do have access to, and then things that we know we don't have access to. And just seeing things spread out that way, but in depth and detailed. And then that would help me ask, I don't know, somewhat intelligent questions, I would hope, around why not, or what could we do differently, and which one should we explore. But that to me is still the starting point with this, because I get muddled even when I see the narrative here, and it's like, well, it sounds like we have to follow certain rules, but not others, and it would just be nice if we had a column list.
I can happily give you the statute, right, and the legislation, and it's something that, because we're no more experts, in terms of assessing all the tax structures, I can give you the statute, and I can share with you what we do. Is representative, like all the taxes that we impose are representative of what we're capable of doing, with the addition of the amusement tax, right? Like that is something, and the business privilege tax, which I think we've discussed in earlier conversations. Those are things that we can do. And while we certainly have started a list and we've kind of talked through things, it's almost as if like every meeting there was a new discovery. Yeah. And so I'm not comfortable publishing in an agenda packet when we're not experts. Like we're not an accountant. We're not, so I don't want to publish in a document where it would have what we might consider an exhaustive list, but somebody with more, expertise and experience could come in and say, well, there's this and there's this and there's this. So I'm happy to meet one-on-one with board members and kind of talk through it. I can happily give you the statute that would give you the same access that we have. And I think if the board wanted to consider options, like a one-on-one discussion, maybe a 2 board member committee, be encouraged to have those conversations. But I want to be mindful that anything that we might bring to the board, unless if we're engaging a consultant, which I know that's not necessarily something we want to do, I would hesitate to say, like, this is a factual list of all things. Mm-hmm. We could talk to you about royalties that the township gets as a part of short-term rental ordinance that we have. So we get the royalties for those that get a permit to have a short-term rental permit. We can certainly talk through the breakdown, but to say all the taxes, when we uncovered, there's Schedule C and Schedule H, and so every time we met, though, it was more about, well, there's this, and I think at one point, a staff member was like, oh, we can do this, we can tax corporations, and then like 2 days later, oh, actually we can't. The language is just a little tricky, and so I just recognize that as the manager, I don't want to publish something in an agenda packet that says this is it, because it could be an evolving observation given more time. And so respectfully, I'm happy to have conversations one-on-one and talk through what we've put together, give you the statute, and I'm happy to get some quotes if we want to engage some resources for collaboration. If board members kind of want to do let's meet two board members and the manager, and we can talk through that. But I'm just mindful that this is not an area that, even while we have staff in finance and tax, they do finance and tax for Ferguson Township. Right. And so I just want to caution the board to be mindful of what you would be asking and by whom. And while we have really great, skillful, experienced, very talented staff, we all have our areas that we are confident in saying this is what we do every day. And we also have our accountant, or not accountant, excuse me, our auditors here today. And so they might even be a really great resource to say, hey, this agency provides this tax assessment and can talk through that. And I'd happily facilitate for a report to be provided to the board, that level of engagement for services. So with that, I'll just pause.
Yeah, and I think for kind of my ask, I mean, I hate to say my solution is you put an asterisk next to something that says, this is the best of our knowledge on this date, and then at least it could be put out there. I will say all manner of sin in my job is forgiven when I have a little asterisk that says, yep, that was our best assumption at this time. So I don't know if we wanted to go down that path or engage with somebody, but for me to have a deeper understanding, and I think for us to have a deeper conversation, we really just need to know the levers that are afforded to us. Be it an extensive list of 8 or 10 things, or maybe it's an even more extensive list of 25 things. I don't know what we have to pull and what levers might be afforded to us at this point. So I would, however we can move the conversation forward, and I welcome even, a 2 and the 1 conversation, etc. I just think for me, I need to understand what options are out there. Because then I can have better conversations with constituents and others when we talk about what we looked at and how it was perceived. And Betsy came on camera, so I'm in trouble.
Yeah, no, that's right. And it might be too that we could actually just look to PML to say, is there, interest or support that they have lots of partners, and they might be able to work to put a webinar together to present on, because we're not beyond. Here's the thing, right? Like Act 511, like our legislation isn't something that was just created yesterday, right? Like really smart people, Supervisor Patterson acknowledged, like, hey, I know I'm not being taxed, and maybe others aren't paying earned income, because people pay really good money to figure out how to navigate these tax structures. And so I would just acknowledge that maybe it's bigger than Ferguson Township, and that we look for agencies that have the partners that might be able to put a webinar together that could not just, educate Ferguson Township elected officials, but others. And I think that's where we reasonably might want to start, is figuring out like advocacy, like who are the partners that we can partner with and have some advocacy and have some education. And while staff can certainly do what we've started doing, I'm just really aware that we invest all these resources in our data, in addition to our day-to-day. And the reality of it is we could too easily miss something. It's like, we're good, but sometimes being overly confident can also lead down a road that we have to dial back. But I agree, our solicitor has opened up for business and is ready to make comments. So I'll yield the floor to Betsy. Thank you.
Well, good evening, everyone. I would simply add, I think I would probably start, Centrice, by giving the board the DCED document, which I know staff looked at, which talks more broadly about taxes, right? It's not just income taxes, it deals with real estate taxes.
And it's in the department report, the link.
And you're going to have to digest a lot of information, but I understand, Matt, where you're coming from. It would be nice if there was some simple way to do this, and maybe PML is willing to consider putting together that resource. What I can tell you about local tax enabling law is that the state government gets to control what you're allowed to do, and much like the dreaded issue of radar detectors, they just haven't been willing to expand that to give you a lot of latitude. So I think it'd be good to look at that resource and then maybe talk with PML about issues that you all see and would like to look at. I suspect that staff cringed when I suggested that, because in that book they also talk about the people that have more latitude in the state, like Philadelphia and Allegheny, Pittsburgh, both a city of the first class in Philadelphia's case, and a county of the first class, and then Allegheny County is a county of the second class and a city of the second class. But once you get below those two levels, the rules are really hard for you, and that is essentially why many of our cities of the third class have gone into bankruptcy. So it is not an issue that the legislature isn't aware of, but I don't think there's been a lot of latitude to look at broadening what's available to you. So I encourage you to look at that resource and use that first. kind of familiarize yourselves with the statutes and what's out there, and then you can kind of come back from there. And Amari, you raise a good point, and I suspect that nobody's really looked at it because of the change in the last 20 years and the proliferation, if I can use that word, of LLCs, right? So corporate people chose to be treated as a corporation for primarily liability purposes, but before that they were Schedule C. And a lot of limited liability companies have come into fruition as a preferred choice. And so we might want to look at that. I don't know that there's an answer, and I don't know that there's a legislative fix or not, but it's worth at least considering that as some kind of compromise or maybe a new way to look at how we tax income.
Thank you, that was my only comments.
I'm going to provide an email to the board with an excerpt of what was in the April department report within the administration section of the report, as it has the link that our solicitor just referenced, as well as some other details as it relates to the assessment that was conducted. Of course, thank you.
Any other?
I have a couple of actions, if I may, and feel free to vote them up or down, but I have a few motions here. So number one is I move to direct staff to ask PML for a seminar, some such thing, on Act 511 and other revenue permitted at the state level.
This is Patty on second, sorry.
So Mr. Patterson motioned that, Ms. Stevens seconded that. Any discussion?
Clarification, at the state level or at what might be?
Well, it's what's permitted at the state level
It's
for
in
the
the statute.
local.
For the local.
For the local. So this list, I think,
Yeah.
if PMO were to put something on, they'd probably have a list.
Yep.
Here's what you're allowed to do as a municipality.
Understood, as long as that's clear, thank you.
Did you have more?
I did.
Should we vote on these
We should.
individually and then let you present the next ones?
Yes.
Okay. No further discussion. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed say no. Okay.
Mr. Chair, I move to direct staff to write a letter to the PML for state level advocacy for amending earned income tax to allow entities with home rule charter to increase their taxation flexibility.
Do we have a second?
This is Matt, second.
Got a motion by Mr. Patterson, second by Mr. Heller. Any discussion on that one?
So are you, I guess just elaborate on that a little bit.
So I have read some of these acts and state level laws that exist, and they have the list of things you can do. They have the max number that you can put to a certain thing, like the $51 for local services tax, right? These maxes and these. So I know, because if you look at the backside of your earned income tax when you fill it out, it has what's included, what can be taxed, and it has what is not included in your income tax. And so one of those things is distributions. So I'd like to get PML started on, and they may say no, but they may also say, yes, there's other entities within the municipal league that are looking toward this as well. So I'd like to get that ball rolling.
Okay, I just wanted to clear up that was the intent of
Yes.
that one. Yeah. Okay, and
They could say that if we write a letter and send it, they could say no, rip it up, and tell us to go pound salt.
yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Any other comments on that? Based on that particular motion, that already sounds like something that it sounds like PML has been advocating for that, and we have adopted those resolutions to PML, I think for at least the last 3 or 4, actually ever since I became on the board, that's been something, I think that's been a part of PML, so. But I guess it doesn't hurt that we, come forward as Ferguson Township Supervisors and saying, hey, we're still on board with this, so just throw that out there.
I think emphasis does not hurt.
Right, emphasis does not hurt. Any other remarks?
I'll just say, yes, I think that PML has for several years really kind of honed in and tried to prioritize goals within and focused on public safety, municipal finances, and community economic infrastructure. So those 3 umbrella arching goals, if you will, kind of set the platform for the areas that PML is focusing all of their advocacy on. And within each of those, what I'll say like 3 umbrella areas, there's very specific action that's being taken. One of which is, you may have, that software update. They say that so we were told, just to pause here, and I'll remind everyone that there is an echo in the room. We did do the audio update. I'm told that there is a software update that needs to happen. And we knew the echo would be, we were anticipating the echo, so we'll see. But as a municipal finance goal, increasing local service tax, did I say that right? Local service tax. Did that sometimes at a certain hour, it's just nothing, I'm just not sure. So thank you for that. Local service tax, there is a drafted bill that's currently endorsed by both parties. It's just waiting to get introduced. It has bipartisan support, but it will take local service tax. It will give the local municipal entity the option to increase local service tax from $56 to $156, as that is, again, a very specific objective that they're trying to achieve as part of the municipal finance goal that is being prioritized and lobbied by PML. So yes, Chair, you are correct. It's an area of focus, but there are various other options. They're assessing and looking at a payroll tax. So there's various things that are being considered and assessed. So a letter to advocate to see if this would be another item for them to give consideration for their current efforts to advance municipal finances, I think is a great idea if the board is looking to take immediate action.
Anything else? All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Any others?
I'm on a roll. I'm going to end there.
Oh, okay.
Let's fold.
So yeah, I think that would conclude that item there. So thank you everyone for your collaboration. Item 7.1, new business. We have tonight on our consent agenda the authorization to approve the Penn State University Duck Pond term sheet and approval of the annual Central PA Fourth Fest sponsorship in the amount of $1,000. An award for a paving projects contract, a microsurfacing contract, fuel, aggregate, and asphalt, and the award for the Beaver Branch Stream restoration. If there's no members of the board that want to pull any of those items, I would entertain a motion for that one, but we're going to go to Ms. Strickland first.
Yes, can we pull item A?
All right. Any others?
Second.
Yeah, just item A. Okay.
Can we pull item C really quickly?
Okay. Any others?
I was going to do item G also, but I
All right. So all those in favor of
Motion. Consent agenda, motion.
yes. So consent agenda motion for all items except A and C.
So moved.
And do we have a second?
This is Lisa, I'll
I
second.
got a motion by Mr. Patterson, second by Ms. Strickland. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed say no. All right. Authorization to approve the Penn State University Duck Pond term sheet. I guess, yeah, Ms. Strickland and Mr. Heller are recognized.
You go first.
Oh, okay. I mean, I guess the first thing is, how much time do we want to spend on this one? This is one of those items where I want to ask maybe some first clarifying questions, and then maybe dive a little bit deeper and look to Ms. Strickland also, since we've not actually coordinated or talked about any of this. Just interesting that we both pulled it. If I could ask, when we had met to talk about the credits for the MS4 program, in that program, we talked about engaging with Penn State University and finding credits with the duck pond. I was under the impression that they were looking to go ahead and kind of offset their costs, bring us in, et cetera. And I was a little surprised to see this come across the way that it did. But my first question is, where do we stand in the process of having the duck pond engagement with Penn State as part of our MS4, and what's the deadline for when we have to say, okay, these are the credits, and we have them on the books now?
June of this year.
June, early June, late June?
June.
June. Okay. So then that brings me into what I see here through the discussion, I'm sure should say the information that's been provided, is we have this initial agreement. That essentially the non-binding, term sheet. And with it, I anticipate that this is the first step to what it lays out as an MOU. And then from there, would it then be a more formal contract or a signed MOU, and that's as far as it goes, which would be the contract?
It would be an agreement.
It would be the signed MOU as the contract with us and the university. Okay, so we have until June to get stuff straightened out. We anticipate between now, so potentially if it's June 1st, we only have a couple weeks to get this signed and then an MOU signed.
Right. So as part of our charter, your township manager is charged with negotiating and to bring to the board for acceptance, rejection, or modifying. Township solicitor and I have been negotiating with Penn State since November of last year after the board formally adopted to say that you wanted the duck pond credits as opposed to selection of an additional slab cabin run project, right? And so with that motion in play, we have invested resources and time to be negotiating with Penn State. You've received some casual updates. We're still in negotiations with Penn State regarding the duck pond credits. What we have brought to you is what we are recommending be considered so we can advance forward, so we can finalize that agreement and execute it. Happy to answer any questions. It wasn't easy to necessarily get where we are. I think both parties had to give a little, and both parties received what we were, what the intended interest was in partnering to receive these credits and for them to share these credits and, of course, share the cost of managing the duck pond.
Okay. So I'll go one step further, because then I dove into this and put my contract management hat on, and going through the information here, I started to redline it. And when I took out at least half the document, I stopped and I went, uh-oh, maybe this is a deeper conversation around further negotiations or what we're agreeing to. So for me, some of the highlights or concerns that come from this are focused around the fact that we are essentially, in my own words, almost buying 43% of this duck pond for the future. For as long as MS4 is on somebody's tongue somewhere in the state, we now own and are responsible for being, 43% responsible for Penn State deciding, hey, we had an insurance claim against this, or there's this issue that it's not retaining water, et cetera. It's $18 million to fix. Hey, Ferguson, you're up for 43%. Things like that I really am concerned about opening Pandora's box on. I would say I'm okay with, and I won't get into the specific redlining that I did, but I'm happy to share if necessary. I'm okay with, in many ways, saying, okay, here's the $245,000 setting aside as credit, etc. I get that. That makes sense to me. What doesn't make sense to me is the other part of this that comes along with, oh, and by the way, you're now on the hook for everything that happens to that duck pond at 43%.
Yeah, and I would say too, and you raise really good points, and I'm not saying that this was the best or not the best ideal option. This was an alternate option to another project that, as part of our interpretation of MS4 requirements and ways that we could retrieve those credits, we had been doing things like the Beaver Branch Restorative Project, right? So in that particular project, for example, we invested in the design, $200,000 to get the design, the engineering design done, and then $200,000 to construct, right? So there's the initial investment to meet our MS4 permit project requirements, and then there's the ongoing maintenance that we will still be on the hook for, that we are now responsible for with the property that we own to maintain that restorative channel that we would have invested in. The benefit, I think, to the township that we are so, to some extent appreciative of, at least that's how I will interpret it, because that's what the board opted rather than another restorative project. We're appreciative that Penn State did allow us to get these credits, and we were able to generate a term sheet that would support certain, terms that are in our favor, and maybe some that sure would have been ideal if we could have gotten everything exactly the way we wanted it, but we didn't. But we were able to get the credits, and we are responsible for the maintenance. And so where I think we were able to forego the benefit here is we didn't have the initial investment cost, because there's no investment in the materials or the construction of the restorative channel, like Beaver Branch, for example. Hundreds of thousands of dollars to do the design and the construction. But we will also be on the hook for the maintenance and the repairs for that as well. And with the duck pond credit, one way to look at it is that we are just now responsible for maintaining 43%. And I'm not looking at the document right now. That sounds right. We are responsible for 43% of the maintenance. And so there is a cost savings to the township, which is why I believe the board wanted to move in that direction, but there are areas of which we are responsible.
So with that in mind, and I think it's an important thing and I appreciate it, it says multiple times that township will have the opportunity to review the design and offer comments prior to implementation.
Our township engineer will be part of that process.
I see nothing that says, and Penn State will sign off and agree to these things. It's like we're being consulted with, and then all of a sudden we're immediately having to fork over money that we're not really in the decision-making process for. So I hope to see, if this does go forward, that the MOU has language that has an approval process.
So this has been vetted with hours invested by our township solicitor and Penn State Council, and so it's something that we absolutely can bring up. This is what got approved, so I'm certain what's in front of you is what will go into the agreement. We can certainly put that on the table, but also understanding this is a public meeting, and Penn State could say no, or they could say yes.
Right. And we could say no, and we could...
And then we are not in a position to receive our credits that are needed to be concluded by June of 2025.
Understood. And I think that's where this is, one of those things where I see what's being recommended here. I think maybe some of the language could be revisited to allow us some opportunity to be more of a thought partner than what I'm seeing here that seems to be beholden to decisions that are not in our power.
And what I can also say too, if it brings any consolation, is that our township engineer works really closely with Tracy Alexa, who's the engineer consultant that works with Penn State. And so I'm not so sure that we would have, as staff, even recommended this option to the board if we didn't feel like there were, this collaborative partnership. But ultimately still having a agreement that keeps us all on the right side of right, if you will, in terms. And so your point's well taken. I hear what you're saying. They are ultimately in the agreement. It's something that we certainly gave some attention to. We will be consulted, and we'll get it, and we'll have a voice in the process. Penn State ultimately is the final decision maker in that part of the process. And I'll look to the solicitor if she wants to weigh in terms of any of the legalities here with this. Township engineer Ron and the solicitor and I were the bargaining team that were going back and forth with Penn State Council on this.
I certainly understand Mr. Heller's questions and concerns. I do think, obviously this board has to look at the financial end of what it will cost. And it is true that Penn State is installing it, so that the 43% cost is really at 50. Remember that agreement had 3 caveats as to when that cost would be incurred, right? So if there's a project to be done, only if it's over $50,000. If it's an act of God or something like that, now we go back to 0 and we're at 43%. So I don't want people to assume that we're automatically on the hook on day one for, if something's not right. And of course, the biggest gamble here is that this has not been fully approved by DEP, so we assume it will be approved, and we have every reason to believe that. But there's a caveat in there that your engineer insisted on that says we can get out, right? If you can't get this approved and we can't use these credits, we're out. I would also remind you all that we are not the only one of our member municipalities getting some of these credits. So Penn State is going to have to, part of what's in this agreement is reflected on other parties. And Centuries, I don't know, I'm going to speak out of turn here, but I think College Township's part of this. I can't remember. But, so if we say we get veto power and College Township says they get veto power, it's going to make it really hard for anyone to want to enter into an agreement, right? And so maybe you just have to say, well, we're just going to do something on our own, and I don't know what that something is, but so I think you just have to know that as part of what's going on here. And again, if you don't like the final agreement, I guess you don't have to approve it, but your staff is looking at opportunities and where, and believe me, I sat and listened to this whole presentation at Patton Township 2 weeks ago, and they've got an MS4 project on Meeks Lane, and they think it's going to work, and they're trying to work through this. But these projects don't just ironically show up. 1, and 2, they're not generally inexpensive, unfortunately.
If I may, and thank you because you brought into one of my next segues, and I appreciate it, was who else is in this group? Because the group is identified. So we are College Township, Ferguson Township, Penn State. Who else do we know is involved as part of the group?
I can only verify that College Township is part of it, and I believe their agreement has already been approved and executed. They're in it.
Do we know what percentage?
I don't. I think we had the lowest level of credits or percentage, but I can't verify that at this time.
Man, okay. So hearing all this, and the context is important, in public discussion it's important, and I appreciate that. I've hit all my topics. I'm sorry, Lisa. I know you've got other ones, so I will stop talking.
No, that was helpful. I mean, I think I'm looking too at the timing and length of the duration of the MOU.
For as long as DEP will give us credits for it. So if we were able to get a language in there where if DEP no longer recognizes the duck pond credit as a credit for the township to earn, then this agreement is expired.
It'll naturally end at that point.
Yeah, and that wasn't necessarily an easy term to get in.
And then the other thing I'll ask about is the stormwater management charge, I think is what they called it. So we had is that what they used, a stormwater fee? If we were to enact a stormwater fee in the future, that they would be
the credits would be reduced from that fee, that they would be invoiced.
Yeah, I mean, and so the decision, like you said, had been made that, this is a more cost-effective way of completing the requirements for the MS4, and, while we're still doing a project in the township. So it was, it seemed to be a healthy and efficient balance of these things. Nothing's ever going to be completely ideal. So, yeah, I'll yield back to Matt, I think.
So I was just, pulling up the landscape there again to get my bearing on it too, and having, you drive past the duck pond, I do rather frequently, and one thing I've noticed and confirmed through imagery is that it has almost a levee, a lip around it. What does our liability look like if all of a sudden something fails there, floods into the businesses and other things that are right along the stream bed there? I don't see anything about insurance or liability in the MOU.
So Penn State still owns the property.
Okay.
And our responsibility and liability is as it's defined in this MOU. So we are responsible for the maintenance and the repairs. As long as it meets the terms of which are outlined in the agreement.
Okay, I'm good with saying it's only maintenance and repairs and not.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you. I'm just wanted to make sure it was at least, I'm sure it was, but accounted for. I'll yield. I just have more thoughts.
Anyone from the board have any questions?
I know how hard it is to negotiate with an entity that has a thing we want. So I appreciate you and council getting that, getting to done here, and I appreciate that we're going to do our fair share, because as you mentioned, we have some other projects that are solely ours and we have to maintain them. And so there's another one where instead of maybe Public Works maintaining it, we've just got to shell a few bucks to do so. And it's anything over $50,000. And so I appreciate getting that in, because Penn State will just, the small stuff, they're good, but if it's a little larger, then we come in. And so let's hope that the completion of that doesn't need any maintenance for a while. So that's all I have. Thank you.
But if I may clarify too, the 50,000 only accounts for a portion of this. There are two other things though, such as things relating to repairs of the facilities due to war, terrorist attacks, natural disasters acts, where we're in it a 43%, no matter what that bill is. And we're in at 43%, no matter what the bill is, for the facility needs and substantially repair to replace the end of life cycle of the facility. We're in at 43%, not waiting for 50,000. Like that could be substantial, all of these.
If there's a terrorist attack on a duck pond, we've got bigger problems.
Understood, but there's also it doesn't even say terrorist attack in this one bullet point, right? This is just repaired, end of life, etc. So that 50,000 is moot. It doesn't apply to that particular instance. That's what I'm saying, is there's so many different avenues here that, yes, the 50,000 is wonderful, and I appreciate Penn State taking that, that cap and looking at it. But I think, again, we're opening ourselves up for a lot of questions down the road. Yes, and I think Penn State is a good thought partner, and I know this is mutually beneficial for everybody. Again, I just think it's important that we bring awareness to these things. Thank you.
Agreed.
And that was, I guess related to my question about the timing of the MOU and the duration of that. So DEP not accepting that as credits is the only natural end to the agreement.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. As long as we spell MS4, forever, essentially this thing is going to be out there. Yeah.
Okay. 43% is different than 100% of the other projects that we've invested in to retrieve our MS4 permits.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we all saw the estimates for the additional projects, and it was it's much higher. I mean, obviously there's an unknown element in this, as there would be with those, but here it's maybe a further unknown.
Yeah, I just wish we had a say or a conversation.
I wish we had a say in the MS4 permit requirements.
Oh, no, I'm saying about with Penn State. I mean, here we are being thought partners and partners in this. I wish we had a little bit, a process or something where we had open discussion, because we have budget season. Every year we have budget season. We go through the budgets, and to have an unknown out there.
Well, and so we've already consulted with our auditor, and so what we'll do is we'll put in restricted funds, and so every year in the budget we will have a certain fixed amount with an escalation increase of a percentage that's outlined here. So we will be very fiscally responsible with maintaining it. It won't just be like, oh, this happened and now we need to go do a budget amendment for $250,000 or however much it might be. We'll have restricted funds that you'll see in the budget every year. And so I'd ask the finance director to work with the auditor to ensure that that would be in the 2026 proposed draft budget that the board will see. So that there have also been steps to help advance forward with management of those funds.
And reading this, again, interpreting it, as long as we don't enact a monetary fee for this, the approximately $50,000 is never taken out. That is just something that we
have funds
paying
budgeted
attention
this
to.
year, so we'll just keep rolling those funds over into the next fiscal budget.
Well, no, I'm saying for the $250,000, the credits, we don't, I see what you're saying. I apologize. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Any further comments from the board? I want to try to wrap this up since this is a consent agenda item and we don't normally discuss this or advertise these as discussion.
The term sheet, I wanted to get it out for the board to have the discussion.
Okay.
Or approve it, however it was gonna go.
Right. So this is an authorization to approve, but before we move further, I am going to entertain public comment for comments only. We'll start with Mr. Kunkel online.
Thank you very much. I've had an opportunity to take a look at the non-binding agreement also. And the question is, does the township have the opportunity just to pay the $245,000 without having to create a credit account that grows by the CPI every year? Can we just buy the credits?
That is not something that we negotiated.
Okay. Yeah.
So we don't know whether we can just buy them or not.
It is not something that was negotiated, so it cannot be confirmed or denied.
Yeah, that's all we have for that.
If we're going to escrow the $245,000 annually, will that be taken out of the balance of the stormwater management fee fund?
The township no longer has a stormwater management fund.
But there was a balance in that fund at the end of last year.
In consulting with our auditors, we put all of those funds back into the general fund, which I believe at some point was discussed with the board or an update had been provided to the board. So that fund is no longer going to be represented into the budget. And instead, what you'll see is part of the general fund, the expenditures. And this would be included as a restricted use of funds for this DEFCON credit.
Another question is, if College Township has approved a similar agreement, would it be prudent to get a copy of that before the board takes action on this to compare the terms and conditions under which the township is entering into this agreement with Penn State and those terms and conditions that College Township has agreed to?
I can't recall. I want to say we did request for a copy of it and the township engineer may have had reviewed it. He's not here for me to confirm, but certainly that was something that we had. I talked to the township manager, Adam Broomball, and he and I had discussed because they had already executed it, and so it's considered a public document. And so there were conversations, of course, between me and the manager, and I'm comfortable with our agreement and where we landed, especially in comparison to theirs.
Finally, I guess for the board and possibly for Betsy's consideration, when the MOU is finally prepared, will there be a termination clause?
There's not a termination clause currently in the binding, in the term sheet, therefore and I'll look at Betsy, there is, go ahead,
There's
Betsy.
termination language. So I think the caveat here is that, first of all, there's termination language, Mark, if the project does not meet MS4, right? If DEP doesn't accept it, it automatically terminates. We have no responsibility. We go back to square one. Whatever square one looks like, that's where we go back to. If it is approved and it's developed, then the agreement is in place so long as we each have MS4 permits and are required to use credits. You know, I think the engineers are hesitating a little bit because we premise that on DEP requiring MS4 credits. Nobody has any belief that that's going to go away. But in any event, if it did go away, then the agreement would also terminate, right? If the need goes away, the agreement terminates. The only thing that sort of stays, if there is something that stays, is that credit bank, right? They're getting the credit bank for building this and having us comply for whatever period of time we comply, right? That's the deal.
Just wondering whether or not there would be a possibility that if the township would want to terminate the agreement, a future board would want to terminate this agreement, that they would have the ability to pay out the value of the credit bank.
That isn't something that we negotiated with Penn State. I mean, if the board directs us to, we can ask about that. You know, I guess my whole thought is here, just like the Beaver Branch project, this board is binding future boards by creating that project and making future boards responsible for maintaining it. So yeah, I understand your question. We can certainly go back and ask Penn State. But I don't have a feeling that they're going to be willing to do that.
Thank you.
All right. Did you have anything to add, Mr. Keel?
Man.
Step on up.
Bill Keogh, Ferguson Township resident. I too attempted to read the agreement. I must say that I had difficulty following it through its terms and all of those kinds of things. So I'm not speaking from a position of high intellect or knowledge of what I read. Couple of questions. I haven't heard anybody tell me or say what non-binding means in this agreement. What does it mean?
It means we don't have to move forward after this. So we're going to sign it, we're going to agree to agree. It means we agree to some terms, and then when there's a final agreement, it doesn't mean we have to sign the final agreement. That's what non-binding is.
Okay, thank you.
I should let the attorney say that.
I haven't heard any discussion about what if we use the no word. What does that mean to the township, especially from a financial point of view? I understand MS4, but I'm trying to compare the yes word with the no word and get a sense of what the no word really means. And I'm not hearing that.
That's a great question, and so I can try to reframe it. There was a presentation given to the board in 2024, I can't recall the date, but there had been estimates that were presented for 3 projects for the township. The Duck Pond project was by far one option that had significantly reduced costs to the township. And so the way that I presented it earlier is that by way of just entering into an agreement for 43% of expenditures to repair, for repairs and maintenance, is is essentially, we're bypassing any and all of the initial investments of the actual construction of the duck pond project, right? So the alternative, right, if we say no, we are going to face whatever penalty may be imposed for not being able to meet our MS4 credits. If we say no and we don't get our MS4 credits, I have no idea if that's a slap on the hand or a financial penalty, or if we're held in not good standing. That is not something that they have necessarily said, this is what will happen if you don't meet your MS4 credits. If we don't, because of a lack of time, it's May 6th, whether it's June 1st or June 30th, I can guarantee that the other options that were presented to the board in terms of a restoration project, there is no way we can do an engineering, design, and construction between now and June to meet those MS4 credits. So the way our township's designed, the board set the policy, voted for duck pond credits, and the township engineer, the solicitor, and the manager invested time into negotiating this term sheet. And much like Supervisor Patterson said, the board could say no without any legal ramification from Penn State because it's non-binding. But if the township finds it appropriate to vote yes, then we will proceed and enter into an agreement with Penn State, and we will be able to report to DEP that we are going to meet our MS4 requirements. So I can't tell you what the punitive, if any, consequences will be, because they don't necessarily say, here's what's going to happen to you if you don't meet your MS4 credits. They just say, meet your MS4 credits. And the township to date has taken that very seriously and invested in several projects to meet our MS4 credits. And we are currently on par to meet that deadline unless this gets rejected this evening. And I can't tell you what the consequences would be. We would just have to endure. But if that would be a risk.
Is there an indication that throughout the entire state of Pennsylvania, everybody has met their MS4 requirements, and there has never been anybody who hasn't done that?
Mr. Keogh, I cannot report to that on that with an answer. I would not want to draw a conclusion or have an assumption. I can tell you that Ferguson Township had options to invest in a restoration project and or pursue these duck pond credits. And our board unanimously, if I recall, voted to pursue duck pond credits. And that is the direction that staff took to begin putting what's in front of the board this evening for a vote.
And I was present for those discussions. I agree that the board did direct staff. Now we've got a document that says what that agreement was, what that decision was. And it seems to me that some of the conditions that now exist may or may not have affected the original vote to pursue it.
Right. We didn't have all of these details at the time. You are correct.
I know that the solicitor mentioned obligating future boards, and I'm concerned about this. I know that we obligated future boards with regard to the Beaver Branch project. We've got to, pay those bills and so on. But the Beaver Branch project is in our township. It is part of us. The duck pond is not solely part of us. And so I clearly see a difference when one is obligating tax funds for the future, when it's specifically a Ferguson Township obligation to a Ferguson Township project, which our citizens will benefit from. In this particular case, it's not that cut and dry. And so I am concerned about obligating future boards to the outline of
of the parameters of this agreement, and I do see it as something different than obligating the township to activities that are solely within the township. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Keel.
Can I just respond to that? Because from everything that I remember in these years that I've had stormwater education, stormwater doesn't just stay in Ferguson Township. It's all about flow. It's all about sediment and things like that. So if this is something that keeps streams moving, it doesn't just reside within our township. So I would like to correct that it's something that just happens in Ferguson. Our money and our water flows in the region to the Susquehanna, down to the Chesapeake. So anyway, sorry.
We entertain a motion.
Yes?
Yes.
I move to approve consent agenda item B, or A.
Okay, do we have a second?
This is Patty on second.
Got a motion by Mr. Patterson, second by Ms. Stevens.
Discussion.
Any discussion?
Well, now I'll start with my red lines. No.
Oh, jeez.
Final thought for me, that this was an unfunded mandate from the beginning. I don't agree with it, I don't want it, but it's here. And so I don't want to be on the list of entities that did not meet their mandate, that did not find ways to be a leader in this versus kind of some sort of, play chicken with DEP. I'm not interested in doing that, so I'm supporting this MOU.
I agree.
Maybe we need to go down to National League of Cities next year to voice our opinion.
There we go.
Ms. Strickland.
And I appreciate all the concerns. I think they're valid and shared, and that's why this process of approving this and getting to this point has taken so long, because those initial projects were presented 2 years ago. So, this has been a very long process, and this won't be the conclusion of it. So we will still have other projects to do. So we will have other projects completed in the township to meet our MS4 requirements. So this won't still only cover a portion of that.
And I'll just share my final thought on this. I agree with this. The only thing that I have concerns about is that we are on the hook for something, future monies, and nowhere in this does it say that we are at the table and we support or have to sign off on whatever maintenance, et cetera, is done at whatever cost. That is my concern. And that's my only concern. But yes, I don't want to get in the way of DEP. We don't need that sort of heat. But it is the concern that we are talking about uncertainty that could be rather expensive. And then back to the conversation of taxpayer dollars, going to something that is essentially open-ended and up to Penn State to decide what they want to do, not us. That's my concern.
And we certainly can ask that question. I was facilitating the conversation in a way where the expectations are that we may not have a desired outcome, but we will absolutely bring that forward to see what we can negotiate if that opportunity is present.
Thank you. Then that was not my final thought. My final thought is to say thank you. I understand the negotiations, Betsy Centries. These are not easy. To Mr. Patterson's comments earlier, especially with large entities and everything, I appreciate the negotiation. I also appreciate the space to voice these concerns, et cetera, openly and with good dialogue from the supervisors and staff. So thank you.
Thank you. And I will let our township engineer also
Yes, please.
knows all of your expressed gratitude. So thank you.
Yeah, a lot of good discussion. If I recall right from looking down at those projects, like I think this board was rather responsive to some of the displeasure of the stormwater fee, but also the growing cost in correlation with our revenues, that this was one of the lowest price tagged options out of all projects. So, being responsive to some of the calls for fiscal responsibility and managing to the best of our abilities. So, yeah. Any other discussion? All those in favor of moving this forward, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no.
No.
Okay. Motion passes 4-1. You're welcome. Item 7.1C, award of 2025 C1 paving projects. Mr. Patterson is recognized.
Really quick question. I know that there's been some, at least the winner of this has had some past things go wrong, and I didn't know if do we get certified payrolls on these projects, or do we just they invoice we pay?
You're referring to
The paving project.
2025-C1?
Yep.
This up. Oh, the paving projects. So what was your question asking for? No, we do not. We go through a competitive bidding project process, but we do not request for payroll invoices. I'm not sure if we went through.
Okay, just a little bit of concern there. Maybe they're
Yeah.
much better about their practices, but I just know that there were some concerns a while back. And
There had been concerns expressed by the board, and I think that's something that we can talk more about if the board is interested, if the chair wants to have that as a discussion. But for purposes of awarding this contract, that wouldn't be something that we've explicitly stated in the contract.
And isn't my understanding when we had this discussion in the past that we're obligated to take
There are some legal,
the lowest bid from the qualified bids?
The lowest, most responsible bidder, right. Mm-hmm. And the township solicitor had weighed in with some comment, and I can't recall at this time where we landed, but where we landed was if they came in as the lowest bidder and most responsible, we needed to award the bid to them. That's in part why we have a bidding process. I just kind of thinking through it and recalling the past as I'm sharing. That's why you see a little hesitation.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Happy to move to go forward I move to move forward with agenda item 1C.
Okay. Do we have a second?
This is Matt, I'll second.
Got a motion by Mr. Patterson, second by Mr. Heller. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed say no. Motion passes. All right. Item 7.2, a presentation on the 2024 Ferguson Township audit prepared by Mayor Dussel. And the township manager is recognized.
Thank you. In attendance this evening, we have Dustin Starr. He's with Mayor Dussel. He's the project lead on conducting the audit. And happy to report to the board, as also indicated in a update in the administration section of the department report in the April Board of Supervisors May regular meeting agenda packet. Congratulations to this board under your leadership. We have successfully submitted an audit on time for the first time in a while. And so there's a lot to be said about that. So thank you for your support and your patience. This evening, we'll have Dustin go ahead and provide the presentation, and please use this time to ask any questions, as the follow-up to this will be a final report of the audit, the 2024 audit.
Well, thank you, everyone. I'm Dustin Starr with Marcus CPAs. I am the audit principal. As mentioned, we're the new elected auditors this year. I do have a PowerPoint to kind of keep us on track, but feel free to ask any questions as we go through. As mentioned, the ACD filing, which is your only requirement to file other than continuing disclosure with your bonds, was filed on time, which was March 31st. The annual comprehensive report that I'm going to focus a lot of this discussion on, which is the big 100-page report, that is in draft form but ready to be finalized upon acceptance tonight. That draft form will not have any changes unless any of those are discussed tonight with any wording changes there. So as part of the reporting deliverables, PowerPoint's coming up here. But I can start with the second slide. Go through there. The reporting deliverables that we will issue upon the conclusion of our audit services includes that annual comprehensive report, as I mentioned. the DCD annual report that's already been filed. There's a legal advertisement as a summary of the DCD report that will be, or should have been, or was advertised in a local paper or publication. A communication of those charged with governance letter, a management letter, and then also separately issued Industrial Development Authority financial statements, which had very limited activity for 2024. So if we could go to the next. So my required communications, our responsibilities of the auditor is to provide an opinion on the financial statements. It is financially statement driven. We conduct our audit procedures based on our understanding of how internal controls are designed and implemented. However, don't give an opinion on whether or not those controls are operating effectively or efficiently. If we come across any deficiencies, we're required to report that back to management. The opinion itself is really the only document that is the auditor's. We are engaged to assist in the preparation of the financial statements, but all of that information that's found within those financial statements is provided by management and is the responsibility of management. So the books and records, the accounting system, all of that is maintained by management. The audit opinion that we're ready to provide for 2024 is a unmodified or clean audit opinion. That is the same type of opinion you received in prior years. It is the highest level of assurance that you can receive in an audit engagement. Significant accounting policies, we conduct the audit on generally accepted accounting principles. The annual comprehensive report includes the basic financial statements, as well as some additional sections that I'm going to go over. Our audit opinion is driven to the basic financial statements themselves, and there's other sections found that supplement this annual comprehensive report that doesn't provide assurance, but is maintained and reviewed as part of the whole overall process. And is compiled by management themselves, such as the statistics that's found within the back of the report, the management discussion and analysis, the transmittal letter that's found within there. However, the financial statements are what we're giving our audit opinion on. Accounting estimates. All financial statements include a level of estimates. The most sensitive estimate is a liability for pension. That is actuarially determined, and all local governments that have a defined benefit pension plan would have this as a significant estimate found within their financial statements. No sensitive disclosures found within the financial statements. Corrected and uncorrected misstatements that were identified during the course of the audit have been made. No disagreements or difficulties in conducting the audit. So then moving on to the annual comprehensive financial report, it's broken out into these sections here. Introductory section, the financial section along with the required supplemental information, supplementary information is all found within the basic financial statements. The other information that includes required statistics that's part of the reporting package for an annual comprehensive financial report. And here's the page numbers there if you wanted to look at any of those particular sections. So the reporting structure of a local government includes the financial statements that are broken down into two different sets, with the entity-wide financial statement that gives a long-term approach, and the fund financial statements. The fund financial statements are what you're looking at from a monthly basis. You budget on fund financial statements. The information that's housed within the accounting system is all on the fund basis. As part of the reporting process, you're required to adjust those fund statements to the long-term approach, which is then found on the entity-wide financial statements. Things that differ from that are then reported on reconciliations. Some easy-to-understand things are any long-term obligations. They're reported as liabilities, whereas your budget, your principal and interest payments for your debt payments there. However, liability reported on your entity-wide. Capital assets and any pension liabilities as well is reported on the entity-wide financial statements, but not within your fund financial statements. Only the outlays to fund those particular liabilities as expenses are reported on the fund financial statements. The funds include governmental funds and one business type fund for 2024. This would be the last year for the stormwater fund. The governmental funds include major funds that are reported separately, and then another column for all funds that roll into one other category that are your smaller funds that get included as a combined total on the financial statements. The footnotes then begin on page 36, which include all of the required disclosures. No new significant disclosures found within the financial statements for 2024. So then just to move on to some financial highlights and the changes in fund balances of the major funds. The general fund had a decrease of $1.2 million. However, I'll point out that does include $3.6 million of transfers to other funds. So if you netted those together, there was a positive increase in the general fund, just that residual then transferred to other funds to cover other activities. The Transportation Improvement Fund had an increase of $815,000, but included 1.7 of those transfers from the general fund. The Liquid Fuels Fund increased $832,000, but did include $300,000 of transfers from the general fund as well. Other governmental funds had a decrease of around $117,000, but did include $1.4 million of transfers from the general fund. Cohesively, of all the governmental funds, there was a positive increase of approximately $285,000. So overall, fund balance in total did grow $285,000 from 2023. The Stormwater Fund had a $1.6 million increase from 23 to 24 and include transfers of around $98,000. Any questions on those increases? Other governmental funds, or all government funds included a total fund balance of $17.5 million, then broken into these categories, with the largest category of $8.5 million of undesignated fund balance. So there's no restrictions that are applying to that particular fund balance. That's all found within the general fund. 5.8 is reported as committed for the Transportation Improvement Fund. You had restricted, including liquid fuels and regional capital recreation activities. There was also reported of 2.6 million, and there's also reported as committed fund balance around $500,000. That's earmarked for debt service, streetlight, and hydrant-related activities. Any questions there? So then, looking at your budget to actual for 2024, as you can see here, the red being the actual and the budget being the blue. So you have all essentially positive variances in the revenues. So budgeted came in lower than the actual, so you actually had higher revenues than budgeted. All of them relatively consistent, nothing significantly came in over budget, with taxes being the largest, a lot of that relating to EIT and real estate transfer taxes that were received. So then looking at the same with expenses, the flip side, but a positive because expenditures came in under budget for all categories here, however, relatively consistent with the budgeted amounts. GASB 68 was a standard that was required governments to include the net pension liability. That was that sensitive disclosure that I mentioned earlier. These amounts are actuarially determined. The ending net pension liability was approximately $1.7 million as of year end. It includes a total pension liability of approximately 9.6, and the trust set aside for the plan pension for the police plan was approximately 7.8. Most governments do report a liability. This isn't necessarily any significant concern. As long as you continue to make your MMO payments that are actually determined from one year to the next, you would have enough in your plan position in order to cover that liability. This is kind of looking at it as of right now, if every person was entitled to their retirement, there would be a 1.7 deficit in meeting all of those expenditures. That's not reality. Those individuals will continue to be on the plan, some will fall off, you'll continue to make contributions. There are some differences between the actual results of the pension plan and what the actuary determines. Not to get into the accounting behind this, but essentially what it's saying is that these pieces that are different than what was estimated during the year get amortized over a number of years and reported as either revenue or expense. But the liability continues to move as things change. Some sensitivity analysis, the discount rate that's used on the pension liability is 8%. So the actuary uses the 8% as an estimate to say as long as your return on investments on the pension plan are at 8%, you would have a liability of approximately $1.7 million that I previously reported. If actual results were 1% under, that liability would go up to around $3 million. If the performance of the investments were better than the 8% by 1% at 9%, your liability would go down significantly to be under $1 million. So a change in the overall markets of the pension plan could have a significant amount that gets reported in the financial statements. That's the highlights that I had for today. Do you have any questions on any of the deliverables?
No. Mr. Heller.
Yeah. So I appreciate this. Thank you so much for coming in, going through these items, really distilling it down. I always appreciate that. I guess my question is, and maybe this is a question for staff as well as Dustin, but how are we doing? How, compared to everyone else, compared to things that you're seeing, what's our grade? As we think about the larger picture.
Well, as an auditor, the performance of an entity really isn't what an auditor grades you on, per se. As long as you're continuing to maintain fund balance and use that fund balance as needed, I think operating on a balanced budget doesn't really work in local government. We talk about various projects that you have down the road. You have an unassigned fund balance of approximately $8.5 million that can be used for future projects. As a general rule, the GFOA, which is the Governmental Finance Officer Association, they dictate that you should have a minimum of around 1/4 of your total expenditures. You're about 50% of that as of year end, so that fund balance is healthy. You do have the ability to move that however you need fit. I will say, in terms of the overall process that we had, extremely helpful staff here. Todd pretty much sat with us at one point. This first year, it's hard for us. It's hard for the staff to kind of understand what we're asking for. We might call something one thing, they call it something else. There's a big language barrier, and Todd was all hands on deck to help us get through that. And we can now use the notes and the things that we gained for next year to make. I told Todd, this is not going to be the funnest audit, because whenever there's a change, we have to get on the same page. But I promise next year it will be significantly easier, because we already hit the ground running with what to ask, what the expectations are, and overall it was a very positive experience for us.
I am sorry to hear that it was not the funnest audit. We'll go with that. So I appreciate the dialogue, because it's important for folks to for all of us to hear kind of where this fits in. And also where I think about where this fits in as we enter budget season. Could we talk a little bit more about what this will be used for going forward? Because I know we potentially accept it, but then how does this fit into the rest of the calendar year in our budget? I think it's always good to level set on that once a year. So maybe that's a question for staff.
Yeah, so obviously I think what I heard is what we heard last year, is that we have as Dustin shared this evening, a very healthy general fund balance, which, I think last year there were maybe other words used, but ultimately we have a lot of money in our general fund, which is, I think, 3 months is 3 months of expenditures is really what's recommended. And so what I'll go a step further, and then I invite Dustin to correct me if I'm wrong, but we are in a good place for a year, 2 or 3, recognizing that our audit's not looking at any forecasting or projections, right? So the audit is a good tool to say we met our DECD requirements, and we have it. We have stated now that we align with GFOA best practices. I think overall, it's your feather in the cap to say we met the auditing deadline, timeline, and there are no findings, and oftentimes outside of a finding could be an observation, and an observation is kind of like a knockdown from a finding, and we don't have any observations or findings. So I would say we're in a really good place. I would reference the audit in preparation maybe to answer any anticipated questions my board may have for me when I bring aboard a budget, but I'm not referencing this as a matter of a protocol or procedure. It becomes more of a tool to reference as needed factual hard numbers that I might need to bring into perspective in preparation for why staff is doing something versus not doing something. I think much of what we saw in the stamp report and other presentations continues to be the tool. We take the numbers that's in our audit and then we start doing some forecasting and projections, like how long can we go and live on a savings account, aka general fund, healthy balance, until we need to think of some revenue stream, streamlining some revenue that's going to help us not live on the piggy bank. So that's my comment, I guess, to you. I won't reference it a whole lot, rather than bringing in hard numbers that I can say, hey, a third party prepared this report, so these numbers aren't generated by staff, but it might back up a decision that's being recommended to the board in preparation for the budget. So just to put that out there.
Thank you.
Did you want to weigh in, Dustin?
No, I mean, just to kind of speak to a little bit more to the fund balance, as I mentioned, around $285,000 in total of an increase. That's relatively marginal when you have a $15 million budget. So keep that in mind that you're adding to it. It's not negative, but if I mentioned one of the items that came in over budget would be EIT and real estate tax. So if you can't control those tax bases necessarily. Yes, if you have economic development where you're bringing individuals in that the EIT is being paid to you, but if everything stays, there's a change in employment somewhere, if there's not as much buildings that are being purchased and transferred with the real estate tax, transfer tax, that $300,000 could get eat up very quickly to the point where now you're at having a negative for the year. You have that 8.5 that would last quite a while, but you don't necessarily want to sway the other way and be like, well, we have a ton of fund balance, 50% of our budget, so we don't need to worry about the future, right? It's a marginal increase. I look at it almost as a balanced budget at the end of the year of what the actual were at that $300,000 increase, which is much better than the negative, right? And governments can have a negative balance as long as you have reserves to cover that, right? Like if you plan to use some of your reserves for some type of project, that's okay. It's just that when you start whittling that balance down, now you really need to plan on what can we do in the future to build that balance back up.
Could you also speak a little bit, Dustin, about one, it didn't quite meet the definition of a finding or an observation, but a comment regarding the Tudic Trust Fund, as the township manager serves as the fiduciary for that fund. Can you talk about that as a non-governmental fund and your observation that we need to consider as we move forward?
Yes, so with it being considered to be a custodial fund, those are not expenditures and revenues that are of the township. That you're in custody of that, you're managing that, but does not go over into your overall governmental funds. So as far as that goes, you do report a financial statement for that, but it isn't something that you can look at as being able to apply towards projects within that, right? That has to be, governed by the administrator of that. Whenever a government is more or less has administrative capacity, that's where it goes. If they're making all the decisions, then it goes into the government side of things. You might have influence on there, but unless you have 100% control over how that money is spent, it has to be held as a fiduciary fund. A custodial fund is a component of a fiduciary fund within your financial statement. So that's why it's a completely separate page, kind of off away from all the governmental funds and not included in those numbers that we discussed today as well too.
And the change that needs to be made moving forward?
Oh yes, so there is a component of the investments that are held with the Center Foundation. Whenever funds go into the Center Foundation, and there's multiple foundations like this throughout Pennsylvania, you sign an agreement that essentially forgoes your variance power over those investments. What that means is you're entitled to, at their discretion, distributions from that fund, but if you're not following the intent of why they were donated, they could redirect those funds to another organization. So if you say, well, we're going to take all this money and not apply it towards that, the duties of the trust that was set up originally, we're going to put it over in our general fund to buy equipment. Like the Center Foundation could say, nope, we're taking all that money back and giving it to somebody that will follow the duties of the trust. When that legality is there, you're not supposed to report that in your financial statements. So that was a change that was made this year to take that balance off. However, it is disclosed within the financial statements of how much that trust is holding. And if there are any distributions that are received during the year, that's what gets reported into that fund, right? So you're only getting the current portion of what you're receiving in your financial statements, because if in the future something would change with the makeup or the oversight of those funds, they could redirect that at their discretion. I've never heard of this happen because I don't have clients that don't follow the trust, but at their discretion, they could redirect that if you weren't following.
Thank you. And so we'll talk more about that at a future meeting. The township solicitor and I are working closely just to go back and kind of do a historical review. There have been certainly ordinances and decisions in place from previous boards that do bind us to this certain obligation at present time. And one reason that we're not submitting for GFOA right now is that, as Dustin shared, he doesn't have any clients that aren't following it, but we also recognize that the past practice of having this reported on our books is just not a best practice. It's not that it's a violation or findings or an observation. So we're going to transition and do the best practice, and then next year we'll be submitting again for GFOA recognition. So I wanted to be able to bring into perspective that we will continue to submit for GFOA. What's the award? It's just the GFOA
Certificate of Excellence.
Thank you, Certificate of Excellence. So we have in previous years received that award, and I think the last 2 years we haven't submitted, but we intend to go back and submit for that recognition next year. We just need to correct this one item that honestly I don't know how it's just been overlooked, but we'll get it corrected. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have two questions before you wrap up. You mentioned earlier, because in your presentation about misstatements corrected. Can you give an example of one of those?
Yeah, so during the course of the audit, we did have some adjustments, one being that investment, taking that off of the books of the trust fund within the financial statements. There were also some other some reclassification type things, some adjustments. Nothing that I would say would be misleading to you in your normal review of the financial statements. A lot of it being year-end type adjustments, required to get them truly on the full, what we call GAAP basis, which is generally accepted accounting principle basis. For example, there was no adjustments made to your cash or checking accounts, and no issues with bank reconciliations. Nothing that would cause a major concern or adjustments to those accounts that you as governance would be misled in the information that you're receiving because of error. And none of which were predictive to anything other than just some adjustments needed to get them on the correct basis of accounting.
Great. My second question, you had mentioned you had no disagreements. What would be an example of a disagreement if
I suggested something being recorded in management saying, oh, well, I don't think we have to do that. Like, that would be a disagreement. Well, if it would be big enough, I couldn't give an opinion on it, right? If something was withheld from the financial statements that I would be comfortable with, I would modify the audit opinion. If it was minor, and we had disagreements, we would have to report that back to management. Or if it was just difficulties because we couldn't get the audit done, right? Asking for information, the information not being sent to us timely, things like that. That was definitely not the case. Typically not a concern, but it does happen from time to time.
Copy. Did you receive electronic or like a binder of paper? Just curious, like how you were executing that.
So a lot of different things, a lot of electronic things. So we use a online portal where things get uploaded to us. A lot of that stuff being exported from the accounting system. Anything that was paper intensive, so we're talking tons of invoices, stuff like that. A lot of it was uploaded, but if there were things that in addition to, we would view them here in the offices. We were here on site for about a full week, especially with it being the first year. We did need to be in the building face-to-face a lot with COD to understand how things work. Going forward, I would see that to be probably half the amount of time on site, with a lot of it being remote as well too. We do have around, we're hiring another person in State College. We have about 5 people in State College. Our firm has 120 employees, and we only audit governments and nonprofits. So from the remote world, we can tap into another 100 individuals essentially with government experience with everyone. So.
And then your audit also kind of looked at the processes, underlying processes of the organization. Can you talk about kind of some of the processes that you found to be favorable or not favorable?
So we did. So in terms of the overall control process, we gained that understanding to design our audit procedures. If during that understanding we have recommendations, we do provide those to management. So we did discuss just a few things. Maybe some sign-offs on payroll records that didn't happen, but there was still a mitigating control, meaning maybe the supervisor didn't sign off on a time card, but as part of the payroll process, Todd and HR review the entire register before it's processed. So a lot of it had a second catch, just the initial catch maybe didn't have the documentation there. Same thing with a few invoices here and there, but Century signs all of the checks, live signatures with copies of the invoices, so maybe the department head didn't sign off on the invoice, but Century's is by reviewing and signing the check and approving it that way. So there always was a second level that could still be relied upon, and recommendations to have the first side happen as a policy and adhering to the policy was a recommendation that we made.
Fantastic. I just want to, these are what I would say are very minor things, but the 2 levels, and you have 2 levels because if one is not there, there's a backup so I really appreciate that, and just kudos to staff for having those under control. Kudos to staff for getting all the right information on time, closing out the books, I'm assuming, on the 31st, to then maybe have a minor thing to correct later. This is, at least my time here, hasn't happened. And so well done to staff, and thank you.
Thank you
for joining us.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, we do have a recommended motion. Anyone want to accept?
This
the
is
audit?
Matt. Oh, this is Matt. I move that the Board of Supervisors accept the 2024 Township Audit.
This is Patty, I'll second.
Okay, got a motion by Mr. Heller, second by Ms. Stevens. Any discussion? No? Okay. All those in favor of accepting the audit, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Almost forgot to vote,
It's getting late.
Oh my, sorry about that. I thank everyone for their patience. All right, so at this time, to avoid any appearance of a conflict of interest, I will be temporarily stepping aside as presiding officer for the discussion on a request for consideration on options that support safe and stable housing for renters. In my absence, Omari Patterson will assume the chair, and I will resume my duties following this item. The floor is yours. He wanted that gavel.
I'm here.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So we're going on to new business. Item 3, discussion on a request for consideration on options that support safe and stable housing for renters. I'll turn it over to Madam Manager.
Thank you. So as stated in the narrative, Central PA had reached out and requested a meeting. I, as Township Manager, met with Robert Ziegler, representative of Central PA United, and we discussed various options that the Township may want to consider that would further support or foster support for safe and stable housing for all renters in our local community. It's my understanding that Central PA United has been working to try and really motivate and encourage other center region municipalities to further advance their initiatives efforts or promote their existing efforts to support safe and stable housing. And so just kind of doing a review of some of the recent efforts that the board has made in support of housing and conversations that we've had, primarily as it was related to the code administrative update, and really having some conversations about integrated terms and provisions and language to further enhance or support renters. I figured it would be appropriate to bring in front of the board for a discussion, and notably, especially given the hour at this time, I would suggest that we hear public comment on this item and the board give consideration as to how this request for some type of action, whether it be what was similarly done at the State College Borough by way of a resolution, that one is drafted for the board's consideration. At a future time, if you want to integrate in the discussion a resolution that just really itemizes our effort in what we've done and what we have already adopted in terms of policy that supports fostering safe and stable housing for renters. I think this aligns with that interest and initiative, but kind of taking it back to this evening, recognizing that Central PA United has advocated for the board to give this some consideration and taking public comment and further advancing the conversation at some point on how we further foster support for renters. And I do want to acknowledge that the township does do quite a bit. I don't want to suggest that we aren't already taking action to support safe and stable housing, but this would be one additional policy item that would really clearly state the position and interest of the township. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, I would look to Central PA United representatives that may be in the room that would like to provide public comment.
I'll ask for unanimous consent for public comment.
Yes.
Hearing no objections.
Good evening, everyone. I'll keep it short because it's getting past my bedtime. So the theme of tonight was about it seemed like it was about the financial health of Ferguson Township. And it seems that we're in a good position. But unfortunately, that's not the case for everyone, especially renters. And so what I personally liked about this resolution is that it actually targets a lot of the systemic issues that create housing inequity, namely in the asymmetry of market power and information that renters or tenants have compared to landlords. Given the rise of wealth inequality, real estate is one of the many markets that is seeing a concentration in market power in the hands of few. And that asymmetric market power, the disadvantage of quite a bit of tenants. When landlords have better access to counsel, they more often than not win in court cases. And there have been plenty of studies that show that when tenants have access to counsel, they get better outcomes in their court cases as well. And so it doesn't take a big step of logic to go from housing as a human right, and that these systemic inequities produce violations of that human rights. And so I just wanted to say that I'm a big fan of this resolution, and that it really does hit all the wickets. It is the first step in a long process, which is going to be overcoming housing inequity and unaffordability, if we're being honest. And frankly, with housing affordability as a top issue, we can continue to grow Ferguson Township as people have more disposable income to help grow our local businesses. So it is a big, big part of our economic health. And I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who put in time for this. But yeah, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Tyson Daniels. I'm a lifelong resident of State College and a 25-plus year resident of Ferguson Township. I live right on Westerly on the border of Ferguson. And I am also a member of CPA United. And I also want to thank you all for your commitment to housing equity. And I think that passing this resolution will be very helpful in alleviating a lot of housing concerns we have in State College, in the broader area, and also within Ferguson Township. We do have the benefit of being right next to the borough, where a lot of student and other housing happens, and there's a lot of opportunity to build more workforce housing that we really desperately need in our town. As someone who's working a adequately paying job, but having worked in the past in nursing homes and in fast food, like most of the people I worked with lived significantly outside of town, like at least a half hour's drive. And it was an incredibly difficult thing when we had staffing shortages or someone called in sick to be able to call someone else in to come to work in order to be, able to like make our companies productive and keep everything flowing appropriately. So I would encourage you to, as you focus on passing this resolution, to also consider, some zoning things that will make it easier to build more multifamily homes right on that border with our other townships, so that we can help to increase the capacity of housing that we have while not negatively impacting other things. So thank you so much.
I am Robert Ziegler. I live in Vilheim. Hi, everybody. I know most of you here. So I'll be brief for the sake of time, because as an elected official, I understand what it's like. And I saw audio in there, so we didn't pack the room to save you guys time. But with Tyson's an audio guy, by the way, he can help with this. At any rate, I want to point out that housing affordability is a major issue within the county. For example, a one-bedroom apartment is literally double in Center County than it is all the surrounding.
So I just want to apologize for the mic and the audio issues. If we turn the mic off, which reduces the echo, CNET is unable to capture audio, and our virtual attendees are unable to hear the audio. I'm truly sorry. And
We'll get better. We'll get it.
We'll have this corrected for the next meeting. But with that said, I'm opting that we turn the audio back on. Thank you, James. James would have turned it on, just so even if there is an echo, our attendees virtually and on TV can hear what we're talking about. Thank you. And thank you to everyone who's presented and has been patient and understanding with the audio interruptions.
Thank you, Madam Manager. Board, any thoughts, comments, discussion?
Yeah, I'll just say thanks first for taking the time to come tonight, and it was a very long agenda, and that was a lot of patience to sit there through a lot of those items. So, thanks for bringing this. I think it's a good start, and I'd be supportive of bringing it back and having a discussion. I think it'd be interesting. I was trying to remember in the past when this has been kind of brought up. We've talked about certain things whenever we're updating our codes with Walsh Schneider. So it'd probably be interesting to have him provide some context, or maybe illustrate, like Century said, some of the things we have done, like provide utility bills to prospective renters and so forth. And I had been thinking about that Human Relations Commission is maybe even a model, because this isn't just a township, we're largely rural, for us. And so, I think getting some of those other municipalities that maybe it would impact even more, using that Human Relations Committee as a model. So.
I agree. I think it's a good start, and there were just some things in there, I think in item 3 and item 10 that I thought some wording needed to be done. So I think it's something that we can bring back and discuss.
I will say, echo everything. Echo, pardon the pun. Anyway, yes, I am looking forward to this coming back and maybe some clarity of language. I support anything we can do to support our renters, since we have so many folks that are essentially beholden to the whims and wills of landlords that may, in many ways, have the upper hand legally, as we heard, and in other ways. So I think it's important that we, work towards getting the language in this, to where it needs to be. And also, I think this is one of those components of the larger housing question, as we heard with folks, even tonight, being there with, hey, what are we doing with housing and other things, meaning folks moving into maybe out of renting scenarios into owning scenarios. What are the opportunities? Again, it puts us back on us to look at the zoning and everything to say, where can we build? What can we do? And also, what's appropriate? I can still remember when we had last year the presentation from, I forget which particular housing group, and they talked about the average house that a family of 4 making $80,000 should be looking for, according to the government, is $350,000. I don't know a family of 4 making $80,000 that's looking for a $350,000 home. The numbers that are being used a lot in this don't make sense to me. And I don't think they make a lot of sense to the rest of Center County when we apply them. So again, this is one thing in the grander scheme as we look at affordable housing, safe renters, et cetera, going forward. So I appreciate the conversation tonight and the information that was shared. So thank you.
Are there any actions to take?
I would be supportive of just having a discussion, I think, and maybe kind of looking at the things, like I said, that we've done before, having a board discussion on it. Okay. Yeah. So I don't know if we can take an action for that, or
I would prefer to have a motion from the board for the next action. And I will entertain a motion for the next action, whatever that may be. I would defer to the group here. As current chair.
I'll move that we bring back the resolution of the Township of Ferguson, Center County, Pennsylvania, to promote safe and stable housing for all renters for discussion at a future date.
This is Patty, a second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? My only discussion point is I'd like to understand the cost associated with this. Most of them are, hey, let's promote a thing, put it on the website, but there are a few, let's make sure folks have legal representation. And I think that's something that gives me pause as we are coming up on our 26 budget, and making a new website and posting all of the people and their track record. And I'd like to understand what that actually is tactically. But certainly I am very supportive of, we as a township want workforce housing. Why not? It's not I'd love for somebody to tell me why we shouldn't have it. Don't think we find anybody, but.
And that's kind of what I'm saying. It's nice to have the example of what the borough did.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even sure we need to start exactly from that place with our discussion.
Okay.
So, I think just a kind of a broad discussion on what we want to see in the end, even if it is a resolution or if it is a commitment to work with different groups or to bring something to COG, whatever that is.
Great.
Yeah.
So my motion was related to the resolution, but I don't think what you're bringing forward changes maybe that motion too much, or?
Yeah, I'm suggesting we bring the topic back for discussion.
I'm okay with it as I stated it then, if you are as well, and staff is, with the motion as it stands.
All right, it's been properly moved and seconded. All those in favor do so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All right, we'll be moving this to a future meeting.
Don't tell Jeremy we're back.
Yeah, we're going to go on to the next. I'm having too much fun here. All right, I'll go ahead and we'll move to item 4 as Jeremy walks in, just to keep the meeting flowing. This is informational update on the streetlight assessment ordinance for future discussion. I'll turn it over to Manager Martin once more.
Thank you. And so again, this really at this point in time, especially in the hour, given the hour, this is an informational update on the streetlight assessment ordinance for future discussion. So enacted 35 years ago. Yes, 35 years ago. We recognize after, there had been some observations for various reasons over my years here at the township. Assistant Township Manager James having such a level of expertise using mapping and being able to see things from a GIS lens, and the Township Engineer actually being the one who had his observations expressed concerns from an engineering standpoint. Township Engineer Ron had asked, had submitted a request for approval that staff be delegated the opportunity, and given the opportunity to do an assessment. I'm back up. That's the key.
I think it is. I backed up to talk.
Tonight we can go opposite of CNET's rules of stepping up to the mic.
All right. Thank you. We're just all going to back away. Okay. Thank you. I think I'm at a good distance. Oh, I am actually. Okay. Now I've lost my train of thought. I was on a roll. Hold on. This is recalculating. Okay, so
Turn right.
Sorry, no, I'm too close. So yes, there had been different observations as the assistant township manager and manager. I had the assistant township manager had observations just from when he worked as a GIS coordinator, and also our township engineer. All three of us kind of having some experiences with understanding how the assessment fee is for our streetlight ordinance. Township engineer submitted the request to see if we could organize a team that would do a review to put forth a recommendation for the change. So right now, and I'm going to be there's a whole written summary included in your agenda packet where assistant township manager did a thorough assessment and did a nice written review. And I encourage all of you to take some time to really read that and then follow up. I'm happy to answer any individualized one-on-one questions. Myself or the assistant township manager prior to the next board discussion. So we're all equipped with like a level setting understanding. But a real high level, quick overview is that we assess that fee based on a proximity, a distance that the residents are within the location of that street light. I think 35 years ago that probably made the most sense given that our development and our infrastructure was designed very differently 35 years ago. But today we see We see different patterns of development. We have technology that we can leverage, such as Esri, and different products that would really help us manage our streetlight infrastructure maintenance and fee if we wanted to continue that differently and more efficiently and more effectively. We oftentimes, not a lot, but oftentimes we'll receive requests from residents to waive the fee with argument that just doesn't stand against the ordinance, because that's essentially the policy, that's the law. But a thorough review does suggest that we modify the ordinance, and the board will be asked as part of the discussion, if we want to maintain the street light fee, then we really need to reevaluate what the methodology looks like for administering that fee. I don't know that the traditional approach to measuring a particular distance is the appropriate way. You know, we install streetlights today, for example, along Science Park Road, and we see less residential properties there, and we see a lot of visitors and/or folks living in various places within the township or other bordering municipalities that are jogging and benefiting from that public amenity. And so, again, that's just one example as to why the board might want to reconsider what that streetlight assessment is. Within the narrative, I can't get too close to give you the actual numbers, but there are 574 property owners that currently are assessed this fee, and it's not generating a lot of revenue, but it is generating revenue. So again, I think at a future board meeting, we will have this discussion, and James will likely lead that discussion as he really took the lead role in working to analyze the ordinance and I'd say more importantly, not just the ordinance, but the actual assessment and how we determine what that looks like, and potential errors that populate as a result. And better technology would allow for more effective, efficient administration of that fee. So I'm happy to answer any preliminary questions, but I would kind of encourage you to take time to really familiarize yourself with the report, follow up with any questions, and then we'll have a future board discussion to determine simply, do we want to keep the fee? And if we do, we need to really reconsider amendment to the policy that changes how we assess the fee.
I was just doing
And I'll hand the gavel back over to the chair.
Yeah, give me that thing.
Would you entertain a motion?
I have one small discussion point. Everybody do the motion. All right, good.
Oh, no, I move that the Board of Supervisors move to further discuss action at a future meeting.
This is Lisa, I'll second.
Got a motion by Mr. Heller, second by Ms. Strickland. Any discussion?
Yes. As you're thinking about this, Madam Manager, and bringing this back, maybe some additional information to the board, a consideration of there's X number of streetlights across the township. It costs Y to maintain them. That equals it's a number, and maybe that's a 0.01 increase in property taxes, such that we're all driving on the streets, at least some of the major ones, and maybe there's some smaller ones in some communities, but just kind of throwing that out there. Maybe you have more GIS data that gives them a little more complexity, but I guess I kind of want to keep it simple. We fund kind of the essential services. Our public works, our police, our hydrants, our lights, because we're all going to use them, right, or we need to be prepared to use them at some point. So that's the one thing I want to just put out for consideration as you bring this back.
Thank you, and I think that's well received, and also at times what we hear in terms of it's a public amenity used and benefited by all residents traversing in that area, as well as our own responding officers and public works as needed. And so, you make a really good point. And so neighboring municipalities like College Township, for example, it's my understanding they do not assess a streetlight fee. They just maintain a streetlight and pay for the electric bill because it is a service. And that is essentially one option the board should consider. So, option one is, do we just want to own and maintain and provide the public amenity and be fully responsible for the fee? And if the answer is no, we want to continue administering a fee to property owners. What's being asked by the board is that we really reconsider that methodology, that approach to how we administer it. So, point is well received and noted for future discussion.
And then also the Mr. Heller's general posture of, what are the list of options?
Is that how I sound?
I was going to say thank you. I was waiting for the
Yeah, and if I may, Mr. Patterson, extend a little bit further to, the purpose of government is to do things that individuals cannot do. Individuals cannot maintain lights, street lights, etc. This is something that I think falls squarely within the government realm to really support infrastructure and people jogging, driving, however, walking their dogs, safety.
Yeah.
So, again, my thoughts, and I look forward to that discussion when it comes.
Great.
Anyone else? If not, all those in favor of voting on that motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. All right. Item 7.4, an informational, that is 7.4. Item 7.5, informational update on the fire hydrant assessment ordinance for future discussion. And we will recognize the township manager.
Thank you. So again, there's a brief narrative provided there for the board's consideration. Fire hydrants are a little bit more complex by way of how the township administers the fire hydrant fee, which I would suggest and encourage the board really dive into that section of the report for a more robust conversation at a future meeting. And I'll just acknowledge that, we assess within an 800, we assess property owners within an 800 feet proximity of the fire hydrant. But however, that practice is not the same for all property owners. Definitely applied for residential communities, but perhaps facilitated differently for commercial properties. And that is a deeper dive for a more robust conversation at a future meeting. But the same concept is still present. We use a 35-year-old policy that informs the township's management of fire hydrant assessment fee. And so at this time, staff has recognized that the development patterns in Ferguson Township have changed from 35 years ago, which strongly suggests and then, inform on a review of this policy. Same with technology. There's different technology that is available to better administer and manage that would allow for more effective, efficient processes. Now, this is a little different in that we did reach out to State College Borough Water Authority just because we recognized potential discrepancy, and so we requested that a field manual assessment of all the fire hydrants to ensure that the number that we have aligns with the number of fire hydrants that the water authority has, because we pay for the fee of the maintenance for the fire hydrants. So without going too far into what you'll find in the report, I'll just acknowledge that there are some discrepancies as to how this is administered, and that is part of the discussion that we'll have at a future meeting. But please be encouraged to read that section of the report. If you have any specific questions, be encouraged to reach out just so we're all out on a level playing field with this discussion. If there's an area that just doesn't make sense to you in the report, myself or the assistant township manager can help provide some clarity, so we are all operating from the same level of knowledge and understanding of that policy before we have discussion for changes to it.
Ms. Amar, I move to further discuss action at a future meeting.
Do we have a second?
This is Lisa, I'll second.
Got a motion by Mr. Patterson, second by Ms. Strickland. Any discussion? Just to add an editorial comment, like I mentioned earlier, about the COG being over 50 years old. Obviously, when you're over 220 years old, there's still policies and things to be reviewed and visited. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed say no. All right. Do we have any communications to the board?
I have one actually
Oh.
that I should have made an announcement earlier. So per the ASA, the Agricultural Security Area Law, prior to the township convening an ad hoc committee and making an amendment to our ASA, the township's ASA, we need to publicly make an announcement at a board meeting that the ASA ad hoc committee will be meeting to hold a public meeting for discussion. So I'll read my notes. So per the ASA Law, Act 43, the governing body needs to announce that it received an application for inclusion in the ASA at the next public meeting, which is the upcoming May 6th meeting. The governing body needs to announce the following during the announcement section agenda. First, this is the part that I should have read. Ferguson Township has received an application for inclusion in the Agricultural Security Area Program for the property located at 1000 North Nixon Road, parcel number 24-003-007E 0000. The township will convene the Agricultural Security Area Ad Hoc Advisory Committee to review the property for acceptance into the program in accordance with Pennsylvania Act 43. The ASA Ad Hoc Advisory Committee is comprised of 3 farmers, Kayla Coral, Todd Irvin, and Larry Harpster, 1 at-large non-farming citizen, Joy Vincent Killian, and 1 current supervisor, Matt Heller. The meeting date will be forthcoming. That is the announcement. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Heller.
And I apologize, did I hear a May specific date yet? I thought in there earlier.
I read the notes to me out loud that
Okay.
said I needed to make the announcement on May 6th. So you did hear a date stated, but it was that I needed to say that May 6th.
Perfect,
at
just
this
making
meeting.
sure.
But no, the meeting date is forthcoming.
Making sure, again, that's what I heard at the end, and I was like, what, did I hear different? Okay, thank you so much.
My apologies for the
No, that's
confusion.
great. My communications were related to the duck pond, and I also want to make a communication and again thank staff, road crews, and everybody for their diligence during the power outages that we experienced last week. That was unprecedented, and echoing the comments earlier by the chair, I truly appreciate that. I know residents do as well, and I had a lot of good communications around what they saw folks in Ferguson Township doing, including police officers, everybody that was involved. So sincerely, thank you.
Yes, thank you. I will forward that on to all staff. I know FTPD was responding to over 45 calls in a very short period of time. We had 12 traffic signals that went down, and within less than 24 hours, we had all, with the exception of 3, that one of which we had to order a part, which we had within 36 hours, and we had that one up and running. We had Public Works Department out there rotating generators to ensure that there was power for the traffic signals. We had several road closures that were just alternating, and working with the school district, as many of you would have received that notification that we had several roads that were closed for quite some time. And so I appreciate your comment of thanks, and I will forward that on to staff. Public Works Department, they were out the night of the storm. We had a crew of 3, a crew of 4 if you include the superintendent as well as the foreman, and 3 Public Works road crew members who were out beginning at 11 p.m. and worked for 8 hours until the next morning. And so you are correct in that it was an unprecedented storm that we responded to, but all of our staff, really, including our communications team, having information up, it was all hands on deck. Mm-hmm. And so while it was seemingly at times a little chaotic that day, I just want to say that it's really at the core of the services that I believe local government is responsible for providing. And so chaotic a little, but ultimately a reminder to the service that we get to wake up and do for our residents. And we can talk about changes to ordinances, which is also important, but when we're really facing, situations where we know people are without power staff, including myself, are on the phone identifying our elderly population to understand if they have power, to determine, what or who we might need to talk to in emergency services, to determine are there designated shelter areas in case we needed to move folks over. There was a lot of coordination, a lot of communication with the school district, just a lot. Sure. And our staff didn't miss a beat. So kudos and thank you to all of them, and thank you for that support as the elected officials, that we have that support, that we can just do what we need to do to get it done. So thank you.
Yeah. I suspect we budgeted some overtime and it came into play. I suspect. I don't know. That's not my role, just budget, but I suspect it came into play. Hashtag Patterson padding.
Patterson padding.
But I want to also say thank you. I also heard from CATA. They supplied fuel to other entities. I mean, it was just really a community coming together, and you hit it right on. That's the role of government. Let's keep doing it. Keep rolling. And I have one communications. I am in contact with the House Finance Committee. I should have said that earlier, but I'll keep everybody apprised of that.
Oh. Nothing for me. Huh? Yeah, big thanks to our municipal partners. I know Ferguson Township provided some resources at their facility. I think even College Township. COG, like we were on top of things, but unfortunately COG, as well as, well, I don't think so much here, but I know with COG they lost power, so their staff had to be scattered throughout the region to continue their operations. I know here we were on generator power, and like you said, Madam Manager, it's prioritizing the police operations as well as public works and any essential admin on disaster response and keeping things going. So
absolutely, we did not turn anyone away, of course, when folks came to charge their devices. We did not actively promote, like Patton Township. Patton Township had power. We were operating on our generators for over 2 days, and so maintaining that resource for critical operations, particularly our FTPD. So.
And I think Alpha even stepped in to provide some water. West Penn Power, after a couple days, was working with Giant to provide water, and I think they had nearly 5,000 crews throughout Pennsylvania and West Virginia, with some coming as far as Georgia to, when it sounds like when they said they would have 93 or whatever % back by Sunday, they meant it and they were able to deliver it. So, Any other communications? If not, Patty, item 10. Can you introduce item 10 real quick?
Motion to adjourn.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we're adjourned. Have a good evening, everyone.